are Squawking Dead, a podcast pulverizing episodes beyond the Walking Dead universe. Sometimes we give you news, sometimes we make you laugh, but most times we go deep. I'm your host, David Cameo, and I'm joined by Cosmom09, Rachel Burt, Sharon D, aka Blazy Gardner, and Bridget, ko-fi.com/PunkyBrewster. That's PUNKYBRUASETER. And today we're here to talk to you, or with you, or against you, about House of the Dragon's Season 2 finale, titled The Queen Who Ever Was, not who never was, or not who always is. You can't see it, but I'll say it. That's what Rachel's title is in this studio right now. And if you were here, you could be here. When you actually follow us on ko-fi.com/squawkingdead or patreon.com/squawkingdead, we post our recording schedules there only, not on social media. It's free to follow, free to join us in studio, to add your thoughts to these episodes as we're recording and see how the sausage is made.
Ew.
I was away on vacation for a little while, and we took a little time between the season 2 finale of House of the Dragon to make this episode for you and for us and for the world. It was fun. I went to Argentina, Uruguay, a little pit stop in Iguazu Falls. I just posted a nice little cool video from our excursion to Iguazu Falls today, and it was a little short little video full of waterfalls. And it is absolutely effing amazing. It'll never capture what I was able to witness. So it was a nice time away with Evelyn, and you got to see a little bit of Evelyn in some of our posts.
Yeah,
in recent weeks.
She's like Santa Claus and the M&Ms. He does exist. They do exist.
Exactly.
She does, and she's great.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed those. And if you want to get the full quality album, we made that available for both Whispers and Survivor Seer members. It's a little extra something for the folks who have been graciously supporting us through thick and thin, meaning for the times where we're making ourselves crazy, that's the thick, by recording 3 series at the same time, and thin for when Dave is off on vacation and everything grinds to a halt for like a week and a half. I appreciate you folks. I also appreciate you folks on the Walkers tier level, even though a third of your support is taken by PayPal or Stripe. Doesn't matter. We love you anyway. But, you know, some of these guys have been here longer, and they just said, so you should see how much they've given over time, and it's amazing. And we wanted to give something extra to them. So thank you. And without further ado, let's get into this episode. Because even I like most of these episodes, but I really like this episode. What did you all think? Bridget, I missed you the most. Just play favorites so that everybody else can give me the finger.
Yeah, right? Wow.
I'm just kidding. Well, and also you're not, admittedly, you're not feeling
It's okay.
that great.
I know I'm third, so.
I'm not feeling that great right now.
And we missed you, Sharon D, last week, just to kind of fill that in because of your power outage. You weren't able to join us. And many comments, by the way, on the accuracy of our things.
I had just come on screen with you, and I was talking to you, and then my power went out because we had a storm here. Our power came back on, but our internet was blown out somehow. I think the tower got knocked out. It did not come back on until like 9 o'clock the next morning. So I sat here frustrated and severely angry that I couldn't get on because I was like, I have so much to say about this. But I'm going to make up for it in this one.
Scroll through TikTok to pass the time.
Right. I just went to bed. I was like, well, no point in being awake. So
it's like the olden times. I got to read a book before bed or something.
Oh my God. It's real
like
physical book.
Like Laura Ingalls Wilder.
A Little House on the Prairie.
I am a Little House on the Prairie fan. So.
I am too. I was super appreciative of the break.
I'm really glad, though. I'm really glad that I could do that for you.
I needed it a lot also.
I just want to say I'm glad of the break, too, because it gave me time to step back from this episode and kind of really take it in before we had to record, which made me feel a lot differently about it.
I was feeling really burnt out because I had all my regular work stuff, and that's at the
and then homework
of busyness.
Squawking homework.
And then homework. So I actually just watched the episode today.
For the first time?
For the first time. How did I avoid spoilers? I have no idea. And because I have not been feeling well, I actually took a nap halfway through. So it wasn't even like a one continuous
long. It was total
so
of
long.
84
I was like,
minutes.
I'll watch this and then I'll take a nap. And then I got halfway through. I was like, dude, I got to take a nap now. I'm not making it through this. I was surprised by the parts that I enjoyed. Mainly, what's his name? Matt Smith. Damon. I was like, oh God, I've lost everyone's name.
Wait, you really enjoyed that?
I know.
Wow.
Weird. I also really enjoyed the callbacks to Game of Thrones. Again, that had to do with Damon. arguably his storyline was the most interesting. The other one I was most interested in was Reyna going after the dragon, and it took forever, and then I got nothing.
Except Sheep Stealer's pretty sweet looking.
But is it Sheep Stealer?
I love the dragon design.
I mean, he was literally eating a sheep, I'm pretty sure.
Like how they made his wings kind of spiky, curled at the end, and he's modeled
and he looks kind of dirty or whatever.
Yeah, I love how they designed him.
He's a dragon, Wilderness Edition.
He's wild.
Was there anything that was maybe lacking in this episode? Did you like that they left us off not on a miserable cliffhanger, like everything went wrong?
It was so long, so I struggled with that. I just don't have the attention span for it anymore. TikTok has ruined my brain.
Changed my brain chemistry.
I guess it was fine that it left on a cliffhanger. I would have liked the cliffhanger more had it been like, oh my God, what happened?
That whole end sequence was like maybe 5 minutes long, maybe less probably, but it felt long. The dramatic music, everybody marching to battle and all that. And
I mean, that was cool, but it wasn't like, what? Like with season 1.
Yeah,
so
but that was hard.
It was, but it made you really wanting the show to come back.
Like Bridget knows anything about season 1 other than the last episode.
That's all I know.
Points.
No, we found out I watched 3 episodes, remember?
Yeah, that's right.
Accidentally.
I watched the first episode accidentally. I watched the last episode on purpose. And then I also watched the episode in between where I didn't know what was happening, but everybody was like trying to kill each other. And it was...
That was the one where Eamon got his eye cut out.
Eamon lost his eye.
Right.
So that gave me enough information to be an expert on it. It's fine.
Let me ask this before we continue with the impressions. Did you guys feel the same way about what Bridget just basically said? As far as I go, that made me want to see the 3rd season, because now we're gearing up to this thing and it's just like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. The season 3 premiere. Did you feel the same way, or do you feel it was like anticlimactic?
I have very mixed feelings. So I did get 2 watches in. The first time I watched this,
same.
I felt a little let down, and I thought, man, this feels like a mid-season break, not a season finale. But then I watched it again and I was like, okay, I see what you did there. We've spent this whole season building up to this war, and the next season is going to be that war. But then I thought, no, they're not going to give that to us. We're going to spend the whole 3rd season still talking about all this crap and not actually get to any fighting. And that's going to just piss me off too. So I'm going into the 3rd season with very low expectations. And if they give me the fight scenes I want, I will be pleased. And if not, I'll say, told you.
Told you, me.
Fair enough.
I had a similar feeling where not only did they sort of subvert our expectations on like, oh, everything's going to go wrong. It seems like everything's going Rhaenyra's way. Well, let's see what the last episode gives us. It's going to be all going wrong. No, it doesn't go wrong.
Some of us already know how this is going to end.
Well, but so we talked about this in the last episode, and we'd said just briefly, well, after 100 years, who knows?
I know what you're talking about, Rachel, and a big portion of that will not factor in, supposedly.
The Joffrey.
You're talking about Joffrey, right?
Joffrey's
the
comment.
histories.
Yeah. The details could change, but the big stuff kind of.
Well, not to get into it too much, but like it kind of goes to what Rhaenyra says to Alicent. You will be painted as a villain, but then this is the real reason, and this is what actually happened. And so we don't know.
Well, I mean, we know one thing.
Well, let's put a pin in that. But similar to you, though, when it comes to what my perceptions of season 3 are going to be, it would be interesting to see them not go straight into battle and maybe just show the aftermath first or something, or the months ahead of when it's all over. And then they can backtrack and show, it's kind of like you saw the ship sink. You're dealing with the cops taking photographs of the scene of the crime.
Let's make this confusing show a little more confusing. No problem.
Yeah, why not? Screw it. Listen, we're used to this crap. So would it be so bad that they go straight into the war? No, of course. Why not give us what we want? What you've geared up and built up by the end of this episode? Why not? No, but that's okay. That's what writing's all about. It's about writing yourself out of a position that backs you into a corner. It's like, well, let's make this even harder for us, and the payoff might be better. We don't know, but that's my feeling as well.
It felt like this was an episode 8 in a 10-episode season, because it was. January 2023, Sarah Hess tweeted that they had all of the scripts done for season 2. We don't know if they had written 8 or if they'd written 10. But in March, Discovery bought out Max, and that's when they came out and said that there was only going to be 8 episodes. what happened is the money men said, we can't afford what you have budgeted for this season. I've heard several different stories, but they all basically sum up to the same thing. Whether Ryan Condal and the writers knew beforehand, or whether it was dropped on them in March or whatever, they had to retool the scripts. Now, they could either drop the last 2 episodes, which would make everybody mad, but they'd still be able to keep the budget to where they had a big explosive battle. Rook's Rest with the big explosive battle, and we had the dragon seeds. Or they could stretch it out to 10 and include the Battle of the Gullet, but then they would have less to work with. People wouldn't get the explosion, what they wanted, because they would have less budget, so they could have stretched it out. Filming started in April. The writer's strike started in May.
This is April of 2023.
April of 2023. So they couldn't rewrite the scripts.
So
they couldn't
money,
have writers. So
strike.
Between money and the strike, they basically had to just lop off the last 2 episodes of the season. And then in season 3, they'll be able to work the battle into it and rework season 3. They could have waited until the strike ended and then reworked season 2, but everybody was already mad that it was taking 2 years to get the next season. So imagine if they'd had to push it back another year. Because believe me, all I have heard, everybody's complaining about how awful it was and how it was such a letdown. People, shut up. You're going to end up with us not getting season 3 because the money men are going to say,
rating our audience.
Really, the money, I'm not talking about your audience. I'm talking about all the people out there complaining.
No, I love it.
When did we get so spoiled that this is not considered good?
Oh my God, it's like she's in my head.
Oh my
It's
God,
like,
I'm just furious.
but
Like
she's
I
saying
have
it out
been,
loud, which
I
is
have been
problematic.
waiting to rant about this until we film this. Every podcast I have listened to has, and I mean, I watch a lot and listen to a lot of them, and they have all complained about it. It was terrible. It was the worst season.
Let's take a pause. Let's start with you, Rachel. Did you enjoy the season overall? Do you feel like this was an adequate amount of episodes for a season?
I definitely enjoyed the season overall. If I'm comparing it to season 1 to now, maybe a little bit slower of a build, but in season 1, it was new, it was exciting, we didn't know what to expect. Besides Game of Thrones itself, we didn't really have anything to compare it to relatively. So it was new, it was fresh. So like every episode was like, ooh, this season we have last season to look back on. So it's easier to nitpick and compare it to the first season. But overall, I did really enjoy it. I think they did a fantastic job with the storytelling. Charity is absolutely right. This did feel like an episode 8 in a 10 episode season. And what you said makes complete sense. Having all of that knowledge now, I think they did the best they could have. And as long as we get a season 3, I think that they will make up for it. So let's all be appreciative.
Yeah, again, a good question to ask is that have there been rumblings that a season 3 might not be possible?
I don't think so, because filming is supposed to start early next year. They're working on the scripts now, and they've already got a time for filming to start. However, if people keep complaining, look at it this way. First of all, you have Discovery that comes in and buys out Max. What is the #1 flagship show on Max? It's the Game of Thrones universe. Why would you come in and hamstring the biggest show you have?
You wouldn't.
But that's exactly what they did. So they came in and they did this. And now what if they say, well, people are not going to watch it? Everybody says they're not going to come back and watch season 3 now. I also read that from season 1 to season 2, they lost 1/3 of the viewers. It is a worrying scenario if people keep complaining about saying how bad it is. And I don't even know if I want to watch season 3.
Well, I even spoke to somebody today who said, oh, I'm behind on this. I'm behind. Came out in the summer. People go on vacation. They're like, I'll just binge it when it's over. You're only going to find out the true numbers probably by the end of September. We have to consider that because even after Fallout was over, people are still streaming it.
And they'll take those numbers into account, right?
From now till just about filming, basically, I think.
Oh, okay.
Is what's going to happen. But I don't think that's going to be the case because even 66% is pretty modest.
There are several more shows in the works as well.
Right. I just saw the teaser for one of them.
The Tales of Dunk and Egg, which is coming out next year.
Well, there's one they just promoted too.
That's the tale. Yeah, Dunk and Egg. That's the one.
Was that Dunk and Egg? I think there was something else, like the Histories in Valyria.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's the one that they just promoted.
No. Yeah, okay. And then there's also an animated one they're doing about Corlys when he was younger, when he traveled the 9 seas. They're doing an animated
series.
Rachel's
face. She's like, why?
Yeah. So, I mean, actually, I saw the preview for Dunk and Egg, and I've been reading a lot about that, and that looks like it's going to be really good, too.
I'm sorry. Are you saying Duncan Egg?
No. He's Sir Duncan the Tall, and his squire is Aegon.
Egg.
Aegon.
Aegon.
Aegon. AEG. It's a nickname.
Egg.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know
Egg.
you guys say egg weird up in the Midwest, but
Yeah, like eggs.
egg, like a chicken's egg.
But egg is short
But
for
egg-
Aegon,
egg?
and dunk is short
Yeah,
for
egg,
Duncan.
like a chicken's
Yeah.
egg.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Dunkin' Donuts should harness the power of this
They should.
Dunkin' Aegon.
Yeah.
Every time you're saying that, I want breakfast now.
So Sir Duncan the Tall is a hedge knight who is not allied with any particular house. He's like a
Like a
mercenary.
Ronin.
Aegon is his young squire. It's more about the small folk angle than it is about the court and the palace and the nobles than Game
Sorry,
of
the
Thrones
who?
and House of the Dragon. The small folk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Again, at first, I was really disappointed. I was expecting something that didn't come. I didn't let that ruin my opinion of the whole season or anything. Like, I still think this was a fantastic episode, man. As a matter of fact, there were a couple scenes that had me in tears when I rewatched it today.
Same.
I mean, I was like, man,
Same.
it really got me.
Can I just say which one really got me?
Kristen.
You know what? Secondary.
Okay, then Corliss.
Frankel freaking brought it. Mr. Frankel, I forget his
Yes.
first name, but Frankel is because
Fabian.
he's
How can
Jewish
you
and
forget
stuck in my
Fabian
head.
Frankel?
Fabian Frankel. But I'm taking the whole Damon thing and putting it to the side because I was like, yeah. But the things that got me really emotional, Corliss and Alan.
Yeah, me too.
Abu Bakr, I
Yeah.
forget his last name. But,
Salim.
Yeah. Dude, that whole drama surprised me. I didn't think he had it in him. Goosebumps.
Corliss kept going, all right, you can go.
Seriously.
And Alan's like, oh no, you opened this can of worms, buddy. You're getting it now. You telling me to go? You just threw your crumbs of your favor at me. Now you're telling me to go? You're going to hear it, buddy. You could see it hitting Corliss. It was just something that had never occurred to him in his entire life, that these kids were struggling.
There are like moments in your life where you think or you fear that that is the case, but you keep going on and you keep doing your day to day and you hope that that's not the case. You hope that they're okay. It's that thing in the back of your mind that like, well, how is he doing? How is my bastard son doing?
He was constrained because of Rhaenys too. He didn't want Rhaenys to know, even though
Because
apparently,
it's his treasured
even though
love.
apparently she knew already.
Yeah. But it's his fears validated. He hoped he'd be all right, I'm sure. A third line throughout all this is he's got to be like somewhat proud of this man.
But here's the other thing, Dave.
True.
See, you're also putting Corliss in the context of today. In the
True.
context of
True, I
medieval
am.
times, a bastard was worthless. You could recognize them, but it took the king to do it, which means you would have to show that you had this bastard, unless you needed it to happen a la Roose and Ramsay Bolton. You didn't
And he
do
does
that.
need one, by the way.
Exactly. But you didn't do that because they were bastards. They were not ordained by gods or whatever. I feel like Corliss never, ever in his life considered that those children were struggling. He thought they were just fine. And in that moment, when Alan is saying that, it is like hitting him for the first time. I thought they were just fine, just like my son, who I took through the stalls. Yeah, they had to work, no big deal, but they didn't starve and they didn't freeze.
They always had a safety net.
That never even crossed his mind that he should help them or anything until
I'm fine with both,
now.
by the way.
That's true of everybody in the court, though, in that system. They think
Correct,
all of
correct.
the small folk are just fine. Like, they must be making it because, like, my life is untouched. So, like, clearly they're probably fine. And it doesn't really matter what they think anyway, because they're not as high up as we are. Because when Aemon is walking through a hallway, he's talking to the men about inspecting the ships and how that's gonna, and the men are like, no, that's the
Iron
only
Rod,
way
yeah.
that they're getting sustenance right now is
It's
through
the
the
last
ships,
thing to fish.
because there's like this embargo on trade, so all they're doing is living off of fish.
It's funny how Ulf mentions that, by the way.
He's
I'll
like,
never eat fish again.
oh,
Fish again.
well, you know, everybody's got to do their part. We've all got to sacrifice. And
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
what are you sacrificing?
dude? They're
Yeah.
sacrificing literally everything.
That's their everything. That's what we do. Why we do what we do. To eat.
It just plays out the fact that Aemon is not fit to rule. Is he fit to fight? Sure. Do you need a warrior? He's great. But is he fit to rule? No, he's not
No.
in any way.
To a degree, they all aren't.
At least Aegon wanted to help the small folk.
Yes,
he
did.
wanted to give them food. Otto kind of was like, no, we can't do that. But
Well,
and I feel like Aemon would be like, I don't care. Let
and
him
he
starve. I
says
don't
it
care.
basically.
I mean,
Yeah.
he burned down Sharp Point because he was mad at Rhaenyra for having more dragon riders, basically. He doesn't care about the small folk. He just wants the power. But what is the power if there's nothing to rule over? He would be king of the ashes. He's as bad as Littlefinger.
It's
Right.
And
just
even
the act of
Aegon isn't
ruling.
that bad. Which one of the things this season has done has really made me changed how I look at Aegon a little bit. I'm not going to
And
say I like him.
Alicent?
But this was the first episode in which I actually could see part of myself in Alicent. I've never felt any sort of connection to her character at all, other than the fact that she does have amazing hair and looks great in green.
Since I missed last week, I just want to say that the scene of her standing next to the lake when they show her face and she's got the dew in her hair and everything. Oh my God, is Olivia Cook gorgeous or what? Oh, okay, that's
She's
all I want to say
beautiful.
because that was
She's beautiful.
fantastic.
She's absolutely gorgeous. When she goes to Rhaenyra and she's explaining to her, I was wrong about this whole thing and I don't want it anymore. And I just was struggling to find my place in the world. And she talks about how she'd rather just be nothing and free. Oh man. I was like,
Was I wrong to not think of you, by the way?
that's how I feel. That's exactly how I feel. Those are the kind of things I say all the time about how, like, I just wish that I could live off of the land and like not have any of the trappings of like today's world. The fact that she's trying to protect her daughter and she finally stands up against her son to do so. Finally.
And did not face the wrath of her son too, which I thought was pretty badass. Like I said, she has agency. She has some power, but selectively, right? So,
yeah. In that world, you have to watch what you say and what you do because the consequences could be permanent. But she's at the point where she's like, I don't care anymore what happens. I just don't want to do this. I don't want to take my daughter away from it. And I just want to be away from all of this, which I was like, amen. Me too.
And women.
I mean,
too.
I see where she's coming from, but at the same time, you spent your entire adult life trying to put your son on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
Even before you mistook what Viserys said. Now, it was to guard him so Rhaenyra wouldn't kill him, which is going to happen anyway. So it's kind of like when Aegon said, then what was this all for anyway? And that's kind of where Alicent is now. What was this all for anyway?
Well, and how regret-filled would you be knowing that you've wasted the better half of your life chasing a goal that you don't even want?
Other people's designs. None of it
truly
having
just
anything to do with
following
you.
what her father wanted.
Which is what she was told to do, because that's what women did in medieval times. You did what your father or your husband told you.
I love that she admitted that she was resentful of Rhaenyra for her knowing what she wanted and always being able to go after it.
And yet it's not even true.
They're completely reversed because now Rhaenyra is the one who's trapped and Alicent is the one who has freedom, per se.
Didn't you like that she said, come with me? I see that this is your fate. You can escape with me. Just leave it all behind.
Mm-hmm.
It endears me to her that much more, Alicent.
Rhaenyra knows she can't, just simply because of the prophecy.
But it's nice to ask.
It's nice to be asked.
I wanted to point out a parallel, though, too, because what gets Aegon on board with Larys's plan is glory, because it's the only thing he has left.
Mm-hmm.
The possibility of some glory or some, what is all this for? The thing that gets Alicent is the renouncing of all the glory. Leave it all behind. Freedom.
Aegon also, since he no longer has a sausage and his son is dead, if he is to become king, his heir would be his daughter, which would start this whole
thing
cycle over
Wow.
again. Because
And
I
that
didn't even put that together.
Too. We'll get to a time jump and it's Jaehaera.
Helena says she sees Aegon sitting on a wooden throne. Do you think she means the cart that he's in now, or do you think she means like a wheelchair or something?
I actually thought, and it's really far-fetched, but considering that the Valerians are kind of no longer around as far as we know in Game of Thrones, and the Driftmark throne is wooden, I thought maybe, not to say he's the Lord of Driftmark, but maybe he finds himself there and that's where he is for the rest of his days. I don't know, but that's the only wooden actual throne that I could have thought of, but could be anything other than that.
If he has no heirs,
I'm not committed to that.
I mean, no proper heir in the sense of the traditional term. Maybe he does rule somewhere in Essos and that's the end of his lineage.
Ironically, living out the rest of his days as a lord of something or unnamed lord, different name or something.
I gotta go, and I'm so sorry to do this to you guys.
No, it's okay.
I do have things to say about this, but oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna
Get
just
some
try
rest,
to go to bed
Bridget.
and not puke. So,
Yeah.
love you
Feel
guys,
better,
and
Bridget.
Try to sleep it off.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry. Let's fight.
I'll talk to you guys later. Love you guys. Bye.
Hey, feel better.
I feel better. Well, no, what did you think in terms of the wooden throne?
I thought they meant a wheelchair.
Seems on the nose, doesn't it? We just invented a chair with wheels on it.
I didn't think too hard about it, but the Driftmark thing kind of makes sense. It's a hard pull, but so does the wheelchair thing, though. We've seen him like up and trying to walk around and stuff. He is somewhat making progress in like at least walking and stuff. So I don't know. She said wooden throne. She used those words.
Mm-hmm,
Mhm.
mm-hmm,
He'll sit on a wooden throne.
mm-hmm. And you'll be dead.
Yeah.
Ooh.
If you don't want to hear a spoiler,
Or
5,
maybe spoiler.
4, 3, 2, 1. Aemond and Daemon end up dying at the God's Eye. Daemon kills Aemond by sticking his sword through his good eye, and he falls into the water. Years later, they find his body still chained to his dragon saddle at the bottom of the lake.
So the dragon dies at the same time?
Now you can.
I'm more upset about Vagar.
So interesting that you say this. Spoiler that maybe or maybe not you heard after you muted or didn't mute and you heard this. Do you remember earlier in Daemon's visions when he was chasing someone that looked like Aemon in Harrenhal, and how that is a sort of placeholder for Aemond because of the eye patch, and it's as if he's chasing himself, because had he not had this divine intervention, the children of the forest, the godswood, the heart tree, all the stuff we saw in Game of Thrones with the three-eyed raven, all that stuff, had he not had that intervention, he would have been on the same path. But in a sense, that representation of Daemon that we see in his dream is Aemond going to what you were saying before, falling into the water, being lost forever to his dragon, etc. Right? Is that kind of what you're saying?
What?
Let me just start over. Daemon places his hand on the heart tree. It's bleeding. He starts having this vision. Now, in the vision, throwing a lot of other things aside that we'll get to, one of the scenes is him falling into the water.
Correct.
Right. Now, you see it is him in what he sees. But I'm pairing this with what we saw earlier in episode 3 or 4 when he's following a figure that looks like Aemond.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really, he turns around, it's really him, but with an eye patch. But it's really a representation of Aemond. And in his dream, he sees himself again fall into the water. I don't think there's an eye patch.
No, because it's
eye patch.
him. Because it's Daemon
Because it's
falling in
him.
the water.
But it's not him. It's Aemond, going to what you said. Because the dragon is dead and blah, there's a battle. Obviously, a lot of people die. I'm just saying it pairs well with that earlier scene in that previous episode.
Well, it also pairs with Helena showing up in the vision with Daemon. Later in that scene, she tells
right afterwards
Aemond that you die in the water.
Right, exactly. Or well, she said in the God's Eye.
That is the lake that is next to Harrenhal. I'm about to drop some lore on you.
Oh, is it? Oh,
yes.
Okay.
So
didn't know that.
The lake next to Harrenhal is called the God's Eye, and it's called that because there's an island in the middle. And do you remember in the scene where Daemon came out to the heart tree with Alice, and we saw the man with the antlers disappear?
Just prior, right?
That's a green man. Green men are guardians of the werewood trees. They live on that island in the center of the God's Eye. That's why it's called the God's Eye. So that's where the children of the forest and the first men signed their peace pact, and they signed it in front of the weirwood trees. So the gods could bear witness because the trees were the witness to the peace pact. And so to keep the peace, the children of the forest created the green men to guard the trees so they could always keep the memory of the pact alive. The weirwood tree that we see up close that Daemon puts his hands on, George R.R. Martin's face is who they carved into the tree.
That's wicked. That's wicked. I think I figured something out because I did some research. The first thing you end up seeing in the vision is whom you mentioned in an earlier episode.
Brendan Rivers.
AKA Lord Bloodraven.
He is known because of the port wine stain on his face.
The birthmark.
He is the first three-eyed raven. He is also the one we see later in Game of Thrones that Bran meets under the tree.
Huh.
And here's another little twist for you. He is a descendant of Daemon.
Right, I was going to say that. What's interesting about that is his last name is Rivers and not Dragon
Targaryen.
Seed or White. Ulf's last name is White. Hugh takes on the mantle
he's
of
called
Hugh
Ulf
Hammer.
the White. His last name is not White.
Oh,
he's
okay.
Ulf the White. Just like
everybody's
Hugh
Ulf
the Hammer.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like Alan of Hull instead of Alan. But sometimes he's called Alan Hull or Adam Hull.
Right, because that's the last name for bastards in that area. But
it's not Jon of Snow. It's just Jon Snow. So like sometimes they'll call them this or that. And really it's just the house name. So you could say Daemon of Targaryen or Daemon the Targaryen. It's inconsequential. But anyway,
I don't think Daemon the Targaryen works.
Listen, you go back. You mute again. Okay.
Okay.
None of it works. But anyway, but I just find it interesting that he is a Rivers and not a Targaryen. Obviously, he's a bastard. I don't know if he did it with Alice Rivers to make it that way, or I don't know anything. But I think it's just interesting that he's a Riverland bastard.
I don't think that he and Alice have anything going on.
Well, not that we've seen.
She is working for the Children of the Forest because they want a good outcome. She knows that if Aemond or the other Targaryens take over, that they're just going to lay waste to the land and the small folk. She's trying to lead Daemon into to what he needs to do in order for Rhaenyra to take the throne. When she goes into his room and she gets ready to lead him to the Weirwood tree, and she's crying. And I think it's because she knows she's showing him what's going to happen to everybody. She knows that it comes to an end.
I see what you're saying. So for good or for ill, it's in his hands now. Now I'm entrusting this future to this man,
Right.
whom I hope learns something here.
I tell you what, man, everybody was talking about there being no humor in this show. And the part where she's like, you don't doubt what I'm saying? He's like, I'm not inclined to. She just kind of laughs at him. She had to put him through like tripping balls boot camp. She said you were a closed fist when you came here. And now she's broken him down. It's like boot camp where they break you down so they can rebuild you back up into something else.
I still think he needed to be what he was to even get to this point.
She couldn't have just taken him to the tree and said, hey, look at this, because there's no way he would have believed it. So what she had to do was over time break him down so that he was welcoming to the idea of getting these visions. And they didn't drive him crazy, and they didn't make him, he was like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do. Whereas had he just showed up and she's like, hey, you need to check this out, this is what's going to happen, he would have been like, what are you doing to me, witch lady? You know, I mean, it wouldn't have worked.
In Judaism, they say the reason why we have fast days is not to mourn, but to focus our prayer so you can hone in on what it is that you're trying to achieve. And so it's sort of the same thing. It's breaking somebody down and continuing to break somebody down so they can focus on what's really important to them. And it does kind of go back to what we were saying about some people believing, maybe most, that this season was cut short. But at the same time, I got my beginning, middle, and end. I saw and accept this slow transformation and breaking down of Daemon Targaryen. And each episode going, I don't know if I still believe him. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know who is this guy. Haven't figured him out in a season and a half. And then all of a sudden you're starting to figure out exactly who he was this whole time and exactly who he's meant to become. It was done in such a way where I can accept that change. It was slow enough.
I made no secret of the fact that the visions annoyed me until it was made clear why they were happening. When they brought Viserys into it, I was like, okay, I get it now.
It's a Christmas Carol, but a better version of it, to be honest with that, just being fair. It's not like what Bridget always says. You get it? You get it? No, we didn't get it at first, right? We didn't get it. We're like, why? I don't like it. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, all right, Patty Constantine. All right, Millie Alcock. Okay.
I get why you're making us see these things now. I was totally happy with it.
Because we're the ones being tortured too.
Right.
At first.
I wasn't losing sleep over it, but it was annoying me. So
I see what you did there.
So I wrote down everything that was in the vision. First, we have Brendan Rivers, who is the three-eyed raven. And then we have the three-eyed raven flies out of his port wine stain on his face. Right.
He's also bound in the sort of tree.
Just like he is when Bran finds him. He's grown into the roots.
Very visual.
We see the White Walkers. That is not the Night King. Duh, people. No. That is just one of the White Walkers.
One of the lieutenants. We've seen him before on Game of Thrones.
Right. Then we have a dead dragon. I cannot tell which one it is. I think it might be Sea Smoke.
Yeah, I couldn't tell who it was either.
So there's a part in this episode where Rhaenyra and Mysaria are standing together on the parapet and they're watching the dragons fly. And they're talking about having to kill all the people. And Rhaenyra says, but who pays the price? And they shift the focus to the dragons. Very tellingly. Because the dragons are getting killed too. How hard did it hit us when Meleys and Rhaenys were falling out of the sky? Dragons, yes, they're scary, fearsome, terrifying beasts, but it's just like having a scary dog. The dog still loves you. They're animals that are in this war against their will. They're not doing it because they want to. They're not flying around frying people because they want to. They're being told to do it by their masters.
So you're saying that dragons too have no agency, along with women, I guess.
Dragons have the ability to burn the people that try to deny them. But what I'm saying is the dragons get fed. They don't go out and terrorize people and burn cities down on their own. That's because they're Riders are
Right.
directing them to do that. So they're not
Right.
the ones starting this war. They're just being used as tools,
Right.
just like everybody else.
But they are living beings, so that is
It's sad. Then there's a bloody battle. Damon walking through bloody puddles.
But it's Amond. Wink, wink, wink. Audio podcast. It's
and
Amond.
then he falls into the deep, deep water. And then there's a comet, which is from
Yeah.
Game of Thrones.
So now, can you explain that one a bit?
In Game of Thrones, in season 2, a red comet appears in the sky. Everybody has different reasons why it's there. Some people say it's dragons. Other people say it's magic back. Other people say it's because they're destined to be king. Basically, everybody sees what they want to see in the advent of the comet.
But this is basically telling you this is the reason.
The
it's
fact
really
is,
Daenerys.
they showed up when the dragons did.
when they kickstarted again.
So then we see, of course, Daenerys, which I know everybody was like, yeah! We saw the dragon's eggs first.
yeah, in the fire, right?
Then Daenerys, then Rhaenyra on the throne, and then Helena comes to Daemon in the dream and tells him, you're just a pawn, which is exactly what Alice told him
Yeah.
earlier.
It's all a story.
It's all a
dot,
story.
dot.
You're just a player.
You're just one part in it.
Yep.
I
And
wrote,
then
I wrote down a lot of quotes this episode. They're so good. You know your part. You know what you must do is what she says to him in the dream. And then right
She
after, like
said-
you said,
You know what it is.
yeah, Helena is Morgan Jones from The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead.
No, but I like Helena.
no, it's early more. It's like before he got annoying.
Okay.
Before season 4 of
Oh, please don't put Helena in the annoying camp. Like, no,
Now
Helena,
you know-
don't go there.
You know what we got to do now? Gotta put Morgan's face on Helena.
Oh,
Damon, you know what it is. Damon, you know what it is.
Lorgan.
Yeah, there you go. That works. Right afterwards, she's still looking at Damon when Aemon comes in. It transitions very nicely from that vision to Aemon walking in to use persuasion instead of dragging her out of the room.
That
Credit.
scene, boy, when Aemon comes in to try
Yeah.
to force Helena to. Okay, so here's a book difference. She loved riding her dragon,
Maybe she didn't want to burn people. Like the distinction
but we've
there.
never seen her ride. Because even Rhaenyra's like, she doesn't have a taste for riding. Rhaenyra did live with them for a long time. They all lived in the castle together. Small detail doesn't really matter.
In the books, did she kill a lot of people with dragon fire? No, dream fire.
No, because she never rode her in battle. She just flew her for joy. And then she didn't ride again. So after Jaehaerys was killed, she never did anything again. She just totally fell apart.
Like you said in an earlier episode, she died.
Right.
Or killed herself, was it?
Well, killed herself or was murdered. Who knows?
True. Which, by the way, when she was up there, was that not in your mind the entire time? Like, is this
Oh,
what
yeah.
happens? Is this what
Yes.
happens? Oh my God.
I loved Alicent finally stood up to him and was like, leave her alone. She doesn't want to do it. She's not going to go burn people.
And then the second time, Helena stuck up for herself.
She said she was happier before she was queen. And that just made me think back to the whole idea that the crown is a weight and a burden and it crushes the people who wear it. And here's the most innocent, she's not a schemer.
She's a dreamer.
She's like John Lennon.
Yeah.
She's like Alicent. She's done what she was told to do, which was marry her brother and have his little incest babies.
Right? Rachel made a gross motion just to show everybody in the audio podcast. She went, ugh.
Even when Alicent said, would you leave here? And she's like, where would I go? She's probably never left King's Landing in her life.
Well, she's never had a thought of her own, really. She's been invaded with all these other visions.
I mean, she's probably never been outside of the keep other than to go to the Sept.
Well, isn't it a lot like Bran, though, too? Because after he kind of fell into this three-eyed raven stuff, he kind of just followed the will of the fates or whatever the visions were kind of telling him, sometimes manipulating them as well, but that was all he could handle. Bran didn't have any agency of his own because this was his purpose, right? So Helena is the same. Where would I go?
Maybe she's seen through the war and knows there's no place safe for us to go. Where would I go? But that's the only way she can verbalize it.
That makes sense.
In Game of Thrones, Oberyn tells Cersei, in Dorne, we don't hurt little girls. And Cersei says, everywhere in the world, they hurt little girls. And this just lays it out because Aemon does not care if he's going to hurt his sister. He doesn't care if he makes her do something that wouldn't break her. Can you imagine being forced to murder hundreds of people? It would just
Having it on your
destroy you.
conscience,
Right. Especially someone as tender as Helena who doesn't even want to hurt bugs.
let alone small folk.
And then the other thing it made me think of is I don't want to do it like this. Matthew 16:26, for what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world but forfeits his soul? That's Amond in a nutshell. Yes, I just quoted the Bible. What is it to Amond if he gains the kingdom but he destroys everything, including his family, for it? He already showed he'll destroy the innocent. He doesn't care about the small folk. He doesn't care about his sister. So sure, he can win, but it's going to cost him
everything he's fighting for, which is what he says is the reason, too. It's about keeping our family safe.
I need to protect my sister. This is how I protect her, by destroying her.
And you lost her, which makes it all the comparison between he and Damon that much more. Listen, visuals aside, which is obviously on the nose. They look alike. Their name is the D is at the end of the name Amond. So you take the D from the beginning and you just put it at the end of Aim. So, but then there's this thing where we see Damon in his visions, but also in season 1 and all that stuff, what he's willing to do to carve his own path, for lack of a better word, to do what he wants. Like I said in an earlier episode, it was never really about the crown more than I just want to do what I want. He's willing to sacrifice his brother's love, his sister-in-law's love, the love of his niece/wife, whatever. But he's willing to sacrifice everything he claims to love in order to achieve these aims. And like I said, you can have two thoughts, which we see in this season. We see him confronting finally the things he was willing to sacrifice. And he does it. In the first vision, lops off Rhaenyra's head for whatever. But then he softens, he realizes, wait, what is all this for? What is all this for if not for love and our family and the people we care about?
I think that's kind of the theme of this whole episode is, what is it all for? Because we just said the same thing about Aegon. If I can't have any more children and my son is dead and I have to put my daughter on the throne, then this starts all over again. So what was this whole fight for? And he's
sounding a little bit more like Viserys every day.
Even Criston Cole is like, the dragons dance and we're all dust under their feet. So what is this? We're all just marching to our annihilation. What is this all
for? I thought the sword was a purpose. The sword was a thing to delineate between protecting the righteous and dispatching justice.
But even now he's like, well, who is righteous? There is no such thing. Nobody's righteous. It's all gray. There is no black and white like I thought there was.
It's a thing we made up to pretend like we have control too, or that we have a handle on this world.
It's this also this mask of chivalry and honor that doesn't really exist. And we paste this over ourselves to make us feel like we're better than we are, like we're better people, and we're not animals. But the truth is we're just animals. And once we drop that mask like we do in war, we're no different. And I'm tired of having that mask up. So wouldn't it just be better just to die and not have to pretend anymore?
Heavy.
Yeah.
Right, it's heavy,
I'm going to tell you what,
it?
that scene, the first time I watched it, I was like, when I went back and rewatched it, that scene, I cried. I was like, holy crap, this scene just hit me in the feels so hard. And a lot of it was Gwain's reaction. He was like,
that he felt it.
Right. He just sat down next to him and was like, okay. I mean, it hit him too. It hit him like it hit me. Like I was Gwain right then. You just hit me in the heart with that.
Right. And how did the scene start? The scene starts with him defending his sister's honor, dispatching justice on the villain of the villain of his focus at the moment. And then they just have this symmetry. They have this meeting of the minds. And it's like, you're doing this because I know you feel you have to. But he who is without sin cast the first stone sort of situation.
Gwain believed in this fallacy of honor because he's like, well, your brethren in the gold cloaks, Kingsguard, managed to be celibate. And he's like, do they?
Right.
Because
that was the best. That was funny because he goes, but do they?
Yeah, do they?
Because in my head, I'm like, oh,
we know from watching Game of Thrones and stuff that they are not celibate. They go frequent the brothels.
Aegon's guys.
Right. They are not. So I loved the line, is honor like the mist that melts in the morning. Oh my gosh. People, how can you say this was a bad season and a bad episode? I want to slap all of you. That was beautiful writing right there. And if you don't feel that, then this is not the show for you.
Right. Because what did we do? We started out this season, and I asked you guys every single episode, what do you think of Criston Cole? And we get to this episode, and I'm not saying you feel, oh, he's my guy. We're not saying that. But what we are saying is every time I take a temperature reading, it's more like, well, do you feel anything for him now? Do you feel anything for Alicent now?
I don't like him.
Any more than I don't like myself.
but I'm understanding him and I can relate to what he's saying. If COVID showed us anything, it's that we're all still just animals underneath our veneer. As soon as we had an excuse to drop that veneer and not be normal or what society expected of us, we did it. And I'm not saying you have to be violent. It's just not being what society says is normal. We found out that that is nothing.
Well, we got a taste of it. Some people had it worse than others, but for the most part, people got a taste of what it's like to live under that pressure of, well, you can't rely on this, you can't rely on that. This is being taken away from you. And who are you now?
Cole is as Gawain said, he is the son of a steward from Dorne. And to him, the dragons don't necessarily have to be the dragons. They can be the Targaryens. Because when the Targaryens dance, all men are like dust under their feet. The fact that they're fighting amongst themselves. And as someone who started out as lowborn, he can identify with that and realize what's happening. And even Gawain, who was highborn, is still going to be dust under the Targaryens' feet because he's going to die for them too.
Let me say the Gawain thing first because it's fading for me, but he also understands this very well because A, not being his father's favorite, but B, also still having to take on his father's order of heading to Old Town and training him up. And just to be married off to some other lady in some other house, and that's all he's good for. He had no path that he was to chart on his own. He was to follow his father's designs as well, just like Daron after him, Alicent's kid, his nephew. And so, of course, he feels that. And now he's being told, again, by another person, the Prince Regent, you're to march to your doom. And we saw that tear before he leaves Alicent in slow motion that I put in was the last episode, the second to last episode? I don't know. Who cares? And it was just sad. And he knows it and he feels it. But going to the Dragon's Dance, which I really like that you said that, because it really does go back to the brothel madam when she says, you highborns, you sneeze and we all catch a cold. It's we who suffer from your designs. When things go bad or when you face these grand pressures, you have to make these decisions that affect all of us harder than it affects you because, of course, food's still heading to your castle, sheep. We want meat. That was Ulf. Okay, that was
Get him
Ulf.
some more of
He's a
those little
hero.
birds.
Exactly. Who can blame him after all the fish he had to have, the thin fish soup? Rachel's making a face, but it's like, and it's not even full of fish. It's just the hint of fish.
But he still didn't have to be such a turd.
I wanted to actually add one more tag to all of this. I can't believe we haven't brought this up. The title sequence is a little different this episode, wasn't it? Because there was a bunch of dragons in line going after what I assume is the biggest one, which is Vhagar, who's surrounded by a yellow sun circle because there's like rays coming out of it. But all the other dragons are zooming towards him. Her. I meant him as an Aemon, but you don't see the riders. Doesn't matter. But I noticed that we could speculate on which ones are moving in the direction towards Vhagar. But the one that I wanted to actually hit on was Dreamfire was in that line right near the back. It's notable because, like you said, it's the most beautiful of the dragons with a purple hue sort of situation and red sort of wings. I think it was blue sort of wings. It seems to me that all the dragons may be going after Vhagar. There's Vermax, Vermithor, Sea Smoke, Silverwing, but they're all heading towards Vhagar. I felt like somebody screwed up. It's what it looks like, at least. I wanted to get your thoughts on that because it does dovetail nicely with the dragon that we see is dead.
I just know that there's going to be battles in the future and that some dragons will die. We know from history that all of the dragons are going to die because there are no dragons in Game of Thrones. One thing they've already changed is Sunfire because Sunfire is alive in the books.
Ooh.
And apparently is not now because even Aegon said my dragon's dead. I don't know if they're like going to surprise us like maybe he wasn't.
We didn't see a body. I mean, we did, but it was still breathing.
It was still breathing, yeah. In the books, he stays at Rook's Rest, and the people feed him until he's strong again.
Could Aegon find another dragon to bond with?
I wouldn't see why not if there were any dragons available for him to bond with.
One, the season takes a concerted effort to say, well, just because you're a Targaryen doesn't mean you're owed a dragon. But two, given the fact that Rhaena had a hard time with hers, and I'm going to make a leap here and say, it's much easier to bond with a young dragon.
When Hugh bonded with Vermithor was ridden by Hugh's grandfather, Sarah Targaryen's mother. Sea Smoke was written by Laner, who is Adam's half brother. I forget Ulf's lineage, but I'm pretty sure he was descended from Queen Alysanne. If he's descended from Baelor, Baelor was her son or
was
something.
Balon, I think.
Balon,
isn't it?
yeah.
Balon the Brave?
I don't remember exactly, but
It's Viserys' father.
I think it might depend on your family lineage in some respect.
So there's a familiarity, right?
Right. The other thing is you have to earn the dragon. So Rhaena, she was suffering trying to find this dragon. I told Dennis, not only is it hard enough to run over all that heather and those rocks and all that, she's doing it in a long, heavy velvet dress. You know how heavy that thing is now that it's had all the mist and moisture soak into it, and she's sleeping on the ground with it soaking it. Oh my God. And if you think about it, Ulf had to suffer quite a bit. He's had a rough life, probably. You know, he had to survive. Same thing with Hugh. He had a pretty difficult life and he had to suffer and struggle. That may not hold true for everybody because Adam didn't
Cyrax
necessarily,
and
but
Rhaenyra.
they had their eggs when they were hatched with them.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying too, right?
If you have your egg placed in the crib with you, it may be a little different. You're
pure of heart, you're innocent.
But
Right, yeah, to close the loop on that though, it was hard enough for Rhaena to get the dragon she was supposed to. What was the dragon that she was supposed to get?
She was supposed to get a dragon named Morning. Not Sad Morning, but the morning sun raising.
I guess all I wanted to say was it's been tried and then sometimes it fails. And I think maybe just to answer Rachel's question finally, having it work the first time is hard enough. For lightning to strike twice seems even less likely, given what we've seen, at least in this series. Rhaena's making an honest go of it because hers didn't work the first time. So maybe the second time could work. But having had a dragon the first time is like, okay, that's probably gonna be the one. The likelihood of you trying to get another dragon, you'd have to be extraordinarily suffering.
She had an egg in her crib and that dragon died. So she's never had a full-grown bonded dragon.
Let's just take that one step further beyond Rachel's question, because we don't really see her getting what we assume to be Sheep Stealer. We don't know. But do you think she'll be able to, because this is the Game of Thrones universe, do you think she will actually accomplish the feat? Or will this be a slow burn where she doesn't get it right away?
Well, I have the feeling that the last 2 episodes being lopped off, originally we were supposed to see her show up at the battle on Sheep Stealer.
A reveal out of nowhere.
Right. Like, because it was like, I wanted to see her taming the dragon. Like, you know.
Episode 5, she finally shows up. It's
it's going to be really uncomfortable for her because she doesn't have a saddle. So she's just going to be sitting on straight scale. Ouch.
And Daenerys did
we've
it.
seen that before, haven't we?
Daenerys did it. She didn't need no man.
She's the mother of dragons.
Riding bareback on a dragon has got to be way worse than riding bareback on a horse. Ouch.
It's like a bicycle with no seat.
Well, okay, so let's go back to the tapestry.
I think they were just showing all of the dragons against Vhagar.
And do you think that's going to end up happening?
Well, to an extent.
It's so interesting because Daemon says to Rhaenyra, you're the one to unite the people. Viserys chose you because of that. But it's not uncommon to have people unite against a common foe as well. And if Aemond is making a foe of his own sister / mother too, it wouldn't be crazy. But see, the key here is we do get a glimpse of Otto at the end. And if somebody had some design to because we know that there was a pressure between Beesbury, who swore for Rhaenyra.
It was after Viserys died, and they were scheming to put Aegon on the throne. And
They were just discussing.
Lord Beesbury was like, "Wait a minute, we can't do that." And Criston Cole said, "Sit down," and slammed his head down into one of the little rolly balls.
The speaking ball, the conch balls.
The conch balls.
I'm just painting the picture because we do see Otto in a sort of cell of some kind.
My first thought was the Beesburys, but it could literally be any family in the realm. There was no way to hint at it. The only thing that makes me think the Beesburys is because they made sure to mention them a couple of times during the season, and then nothing else came of it. So that's kind of... But again, when they lop off 2 episodes at the end of the season, it's hard to say what was originally planned to be.
There could have been more there, but they had to kind of slim it down. Okay, I get what you're saying. It's possible that, because this lines up with the dragons, if it's something that has occurred from within, meaning maybe this was Aemon's plan, even though he calls for Otto Hightower, maybe he had captured him all along because he's the one who sent him away anyway. No, it was
Aegon sent him away.
Right. So maybe there's something there. Because if Helena and Daron had heard that Aemon might have been responsible for Otto's capture in some either direct or indirect way, that would pit Daeron's dragon and Helena's dragon, Dreamfire, and Daeron's
Tessarion.
dragon is called Caesarion.
Tessarion. Tessarion.
Tessarion, Vermithor, Vermax. That would unite all of them to go after Aemon, because that would be the motivator for actually Helena to.
I'm just gonna say
ride.
that's not something that happens in the book, but that doesn't mean what happened in
I
the
don't
show.
know.
So,
But the tapestry is just very interesting because even Helena doesn't want to ride, and yet her dragon.
I
is
think
there.
it was more just showing an array of the dragons that are available.
It was just exciting. I'm just gonna say that it was just really. So you're like, Vhagar, why is the sun around him? Why is Vhagar the shining light of this tapestry? And then wait, hold on a second. All of these dragons are flying towards Vhagar. What? Somebody screwed up. This is saying something, right? Because everything that we saw in the tapestry
It's
either
just
came to pass or
showing you
had
how
passed.
many dragons are out there and how many are available.
Yeah. Listen, your excuses, I don't like them. I want something to mean something. Anyway, I wanted to actually put a mirror to a very interesting thing that happens in this episode, because Sir Alfred Broom comes into Harrenhal saying, state your intentions, you mother effer, but then also goes to him and goes, well, we need a king. There's a queen. Rhaenyra is great. Yes. Okay. So you watch this. If you watch with subtitles, as Alfred Broom is about to give his little speech, right when they get to the Godswood, you hear and you see in the subtitles the words traitor. Alfred Broom is hearing things now.
This is before Daemon is shown the vision.
Before we jump off on another topic, I'm going to say goodnight. I love you guys. I know there's still a lot to go over.
Dropping like flies.
Oh my gosh.
Dropping like dragon seeds.
Dragonflies.
Dragon seeds, right?
Bye.
Bye.
God's eye.
He kind of laughed. I've been sent here to find out your intentions. And he's like, oh, really?
So that's exactly what I was actually going to address, because he does laugh a little bit, but I don't think it's exactly because of the funniness of Broom.
No, I
in
think
and
he's
all
laughing because he's like, of course she did.
I don't think it's exactly that. He basically has everything he needs right now to be king. He has this insane army, 40,000 strong army. That's a lot of people. And now one of Rhaenyra's own people are coming to him saying, listen, you say the word, I'm yours. I think he's laughing because up until this point, had he not gone through this metamorphosis, he would have been like, yeah, okay.
Well,
Cool.
and also he would never have made it this far without the visions, because he couldn't have gotten the army without the visions, because he never would have agreed to make up for the wrongs that he did by killing Willem Blackwood.
It's almost as if he's being tested. Well, here, we're giving you everything you want and more with Alfred Broom. What do you do? And he's laughing in a sense because he's like, a couple weeks ago, this would have been great. Would have been fine. It would have been king, blah, blah, blah.
He's laughing at the irony.
Now it's just like
the irony
of it happening now. I'm getting this and more, and I could just take it and I could run. But he's laughing because that's not what I want anymore. And they both hear the traitor. But he's like, this place will make you go a little crazy, right? It's like, just throw it over your shoulder.
Trust me, a little whisper in the wind is nothing.
Right, exactly. Nothing. This place is a little crazy. Yeah, it's fine.
I want to say that Sir Simon is probably my favorite character this season.
Absolutely. And had he not panicked about, because he's protective over Rhaenyra too. He's protective over Daemon too, mind you. But Rhaenyra is like, the crazy guy. Rhaenyra's
I'm worried that he's...
I'm going to side with Rhaenyra. But there's a parallel here because Rhaenyra has the advantage. She has everything she needs. She has these dragon riders. There's a little bit of a question of whether the dragon riders are absolutely loyal to her and their character. She gets a little earful/eyeful from Ulf. It's like, it's a little weird. Okay. But she has everything she needs. And then almost as if it's a test, and I'm not sure if she's passing this test, Alicent comes in goes, I can give you an even bigger advantage.
Well, she's much like Daenerys in that she could go take King's Landing right now, even with Vhagar there.
Right,
but she doesn't want to kill all those people. So when Alicent shows up and says, I can help you, you won't have to kill all these people.
Right.
Except for Aegon.
It's a mirror between Daemon and she. She has all the advantage. She could just do the thing that she set out to do. She's worried in two separate scenes. What about the small folk? What about all these innocent people I have to kill? Then Alicent walks in. Everything I need and more. Now I have this extra thing with Alicent. And what does she do? she's pushing her away at every single turn. How nice for you. Oh, you went out into the woods. Great. It's weird because up until now, we've seen Jaehaerys, the Conciliator, in her true to form. She goes well out of her way to go to the Sept to see Alicent, to stop the bloodshed. And now here, Alicent is risking everything, if she cared about such things anymore, to see Rhaenyra. And she's throwing it in her face. I mean, rightfully so. I get it. I get it. I totally get it. But she's just pushing her way at every single turn. And then she does the thing. She gives her the most Mary Queen of Scots, like had you in my head the entire time. She says, that's not enough for me. I need to know for sure, by way of him having his head chopped off, that there'll be no challenge to my rule. Aegon gotta go. And she puts her in the most impossible situation. And listen, I am Team Black, sure, but that was hard. And it was hard on Rhaenyra too.
Right. Well, even Rhaenyra was crying
trying
at the
not to
end.
show her.
But
yeah,
she's not wrong.
No, she's not wrong. But like we see her a certain way throughout this entire series.
It's also a way for her to judge exactly how serious Alicent is about this offer. It's all well and good for you to say that you'll do this, but here, this is what's going to happen. Is this the thing that you're prepared to do?
Right, because I don't think even Alicent
Because
knows.
even then, when Alicent doesn't make a decision, Rhaenyra pushes her towards it. Are you going to back out now on the thing that you came here to do?
Right. And to be fair, I don't think Alicent confronted what must happen. I think maybe she thought...
No, she was like, oh, I'll just tell her that he's a broken man and that he won't be any challenge to her. And she's living in a dream world where that's concerned, because that could never...
Which is what she says.
Which is, I mean, she was living in a dream world anyway, because remember when Otto asked her, what is it you want? And how do you see this ending? And she's like, Rhaenyra, bending the knee. Even then, she was living in a dream world. Like, there was no way that was ever going to happen. So she's still kind of in that dream world, but she's forced to accept it. If you want the dream to be free, then you have to make a sacrifice. And this is the sacrifice you're going to make.
And then Rhaenyra even says it, a son for a son. It was a tough scene to watch. Alicent, not wavering, but...
I love the touch. They had her chew on her nails. Like she did when she was younger. You could see she stopped chewing her nails. I love that little detail. Emma Darcy's face acting is incredible. Every expression that she does is amazing.
And it has meaning.
Yeah.
To the scene. But yeah, just to kind of cap the... I mean, it's almost as if Rhaenyra and Daemon are trading places.
Well, that's what she did with Alicent, because... like we said, the whole point was Alicent rebelled against Rhaenyra because Rhaenyra was free and could do whatever she wanted. But the truth is, Rhaenyra never was free and could do what she wanted. She always had the crown on her. I mean,
maybe the fact that she did what she wanted was because she was chosen. She's like, well, eventually I'm going to have to be the queen. So
Alicent was angry at Rhaenyra for doing whatever she wanted, yet she allowed Aegon to do the exact same thing. Be wanton, right? That's why she was so mad at Rhaenyra, because Rhaenyra was out in the brothels and stuff.
The realm's delight. Yeah. It's like his last
Aegon, you dork.
Straw. Still, it's like you said, he still wants to see himself as beloved.
Well, yeah. He and Aemond have the same problem. They lack love because Alicent didn't know how to give it, because she didn't have it.
He registers that to be king, I have to do whatever it takes to get their adulation. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that gets him to get on board with Larys.
Well, I also feel bad for Aegon, because not only did he not ever have love from his mother, really, but his wife is his sister. So there's like no chance for him to have any kind of real relationship with someone. There's no passion or love there. That's just duty. He got pushed into this job too. He never wanted to be king.
Yeah, he said as much.
Right.
Plenty of times too, before and after getting hurt.
He's just as much of a victim as most of them are. Rhaenyra is painting him as the bad guy, but in reality, it was Otto and Alicent that pushed him on the throne.
And look where Otto is now.
Right. Well, look at where Alicent is now. They went after what they wanted, and it turned out really badly.
You know, it's weird. As Alicent is making her plea to Rhaenyra, it's hard to not be real world Dave going, isn't this exactly what you wanted? You wanted them to just give up the claim, just take it. Why do you have to throw it back in her face? Why you got to make it harder? No, and I get it. I say this because they were friends, just like all friendships, or some friendships, where there's always that little bit of resentment sometimes, or one-upmanship between them, or one choosing the higher road because the other one wasn't, like to show that I'm better than you, that sort of thing that goes on between some friendships. Sure. At the core of it, there was still love. That's the part of me that goes, and you see in their faces, they're both kind of tearing up for what they feel like they have to do. But there's a part of you that's just like, just reach out and hug her. But I have to remember, this is Game of Thrones. That's really, really good writing. Because when you want them to do the thing that you feel like they should do in the real world, our world right now, not 600, 700 years ago or whatever it was, or maybe it's more actually, whatever. She's right there. Just give her a little hug. Come on, man. It's hard to not feel that way.
The hug was her asking, come with me. That was the hug you're going to get.
That's what I was saying. Yes. It's nice to ask your friend to come with you.
I don't feel like they were ever actually really enemies. It was a schoolgirl fight that got out of hand because Alicent married Rhaenyra's daddy, which is a little awkward. And that's awkward among the small folk. I imagine it's even more awkward when you're nobles and there's a throne involved and all that. So
yeah, it's like when your parents get into a brawl. It's like, there's nothing to do with me, but now I have to hate you? What is happening here? Not your parents. I mean, like your friends, you and your friend's parents. That's what I meant.
Offer was a valid, real offer. Please come with me. You don't have to do this either. And Rhaenyra is like, yes, I do. I have to. I'm in it now. There's nothing I can do about it. I loved how they framed the two of them at the end. You could see Rhaenyra through the scrolls. She was in that little tiny block. Yeah. She was surrounded by her history and she's a part of her duty, right? And she's enclosed in it. And then they showed Alicent, who was out free watching the sunrise of her new life. And Rhaenyra is crushed in. Like, that was beautiful imagery. My other favorite scene is Rhaena when she sees the dragon. And then they show that long shot, her here and the dragon here. Oh my God, what a gorgeous shot. Spits out his sheep.
I'm using this as a means to transition to something else. Ulf going, more wine here, and the little birds, and etc., and the toast. And Hugh asks, what will you have us do? What is it that you want from us? What's the first order? And she says Old Sport and Lannisport, which is, I think Old Sport's Old Town / High Towers, right? And Lannisport is Casterly Rock. It's something to keep in mind why Tywin Lannister goes to the Triarchy is because, well, they're another one of these people who have ships, like a whole bunch of ships, along with all the gold, as they mentioned in this episode. But let's take out their ports. They can't address the blockade, etc. And their armies must be subdued, and a whole bunch of people have to be killed in the process. This starts the conversation between she and Mysaria, etc. But it just occurred to me that it's like the two dragons. I'm assuming one of them is going to be at one port, one of them is going to be at another port, and it's like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That immediately occurred to me because we're talking about an intense amount of casualties that will happen in these highly populated cities. When she has this conversation with Mysaria, it's the same conversation that people had when it came to possibly using those nuclear weapons. It's a whole lot of people at once, but it pales in comparison to a long, drawn-out war with much suffering and much more casualties. And so you're balancing that. It's the lesser of many evils, but it still doesn't sit right with her.
Well, it doesn't sit right with Rhaenyra, and it doesn't sit right with them either, except Ulf. Ulf's like, all right, I don't mind.
Let me ask you a question, though, because of all the people that you would think would have a bigger problem with this, Mysaria still praises Rhaenyra for her righteous usage of the dragons with this plan. And I thought that maybe she would have something to say about that, and yet she is saying it's for the greater good and all that, which got me to thinking about the suspicions that we had about her.
She understands the same thing, that yes, it's bad that you're going to have to kill all these people, but what is your other option? Because if you wait, Aemon's going to attack the Riverlands, and you're going to have these wars here, and you're going to have all these battles here, and some more people will die than if you just go and take them out right now. You don't have to take the whole town out, but go take out the armies. Remember in Game of Thrones, that was what Daenerys did. She asked Jon his opinion, and he's like, well, people follow you because they think you're different, but if you just go and burn the city down, then you're just like everybody else. She goes and blasts the Lannister army instead. She wasn't killing innocent people. Those people are in the army. Well, I mean, technically they're innocent because they're kind of forced to be in the army, but still, they're the army. So that's fair game as far as war is concerned.
But if they have to take out Old Sport and Lannisport, there's undoubtedly going to be innocent people dying in this town.
Right.
That's the difference, is what I'm saying. That's why I had a little bit of a conundrum.
She just understands that it's necessary. And I feel like Mysaria feels the same way.
My only problem is with Mysaria. I think Rhaenyra has to come around to it throughout this episode because of Corlys' sound advice. He's not wrong. Strike hard, strike fast, get that done. maybe they'll subdue and they'll give up. Maybe, or maybe they won't. But he says you'll have to confront Vagar no matter what. He is wanting a fight.
Mm-hmm.
But that aside, because that's just a peril, that's a danger. That aside, you still have to subdue these armies because there'll be a problem. If you subdue these armies, maybe the armies themselves will lose the will to fight, even though Vagar will not. Vagar and Aemond will not.
If you take out Vagar, then that's all the Greens have. Because they're not going to get Dreamfire to fight. Helena's not going to do it. And the only other dragon they've got is Tessarion, who is small. So if you have 7 dragons and you take out the only big one.
But like dragons can't be everywhere and they still have the scorpions. So you want to hedge your bets, I guess is probably what I'm saying anyway. Because
I think that's why Rhaenyra grabbed onto Alicent's deal in the end. Because she also probably thought it was a trap of some sort.
Sorry that I did not say this, because there was a point at which I was thinking to myself, it's an impossible choice. You're asking Alicent to sacrifice her son. That's unnatural. And so there was a point at which I thought Alicent, because of this, because equally, she could end the war by killing Rhaenyra. And throughout the hemming and hawing, I thought that's a possibility. You take out the queen, your life is forfeit. Like I said in an earlier episode, I think it was just the last one. What is the scar that she must have that is hidden? What is the shame that she has to live with? Well, possibly killing her friend. That's a thing for us. But killing the queen that never was. On top of that, just like Helena on top of the tower thinking, oh my God, is she going to kill herself now? Is this where it happens? Like I thought the same thing about Alicent. Oh, is this where it happens? Is this where she makes a decision here?
Alicent and Cole are mirrors, but the same at the same time. They're both tired of the artifice, of this scheming, but Cole's wish is to just die and be done and over with it. And Alicent wants to...
That was the saddest part.
Take her daughter and live and be a free person.
Yeah, one dead in name, the other dead in life.
But I wonder if he thought, if Alicent got away, could I go be with her? Would that be something he would do? Would he forsake the battle and go with Alicent instead?
Just walk away?
Right. I've already destroyed my honor. One of my favorite lines from Harry Potter, might as well be hung for a dragon as an egg. That was Hagrid. Because it was illegal to have dragons, so you might as well be hung for having the dragon as having the egg.
That I didn't think about it that way. Wow, I'm a little caught on this thought. Because, like you said, will he abscond further with this idea? Or will he, maybe by default, if that's all I'm good for, is be honorable to the end?
Does he feel like sacrificing himself is going to absolve him? Whereas to absolve herself, Alicent's offering up her son. Just like Daemon had to sacrifice Willem Blackwood for his transgressions and his mistake, Alicent is having to offer up Aegon for her mistake and her transgression.
And so what does that leave Kriston? That's kind of where I'm...
Well, Kriston's offering
right
up himself.
Right. Okay. That's what you're saying, really, ultimately. For her to be safe and away, if he only knew. Him and Darren,
I almost want him to go and be with Alicent. I don't like either one of them, but I want them
what do you mean almost?
To be happy. I want them to go and be happy somewhere. Go be happy, people.
Just like Daemon's visions, breaking him down. This show really does a good job of also breaking you down. Because I had asked a question. It's always good to challenge your sensibilities in a sense where I had said, could you see a world in which you can feel for the Greens or that you can, I don't know, root for the Greens? Obviously, no. But you should think about it. Is there any redeeming quality to some of these people? And yeah, of course there is. Down the line.
I want to liken it to today's politics. I know people that don't have the same political leanings as I do. And I could throw them into a category of this person's followers. But that doesn't mean that I don't still love that person.
Or you don't see value in them or love for them.
Right. So it's the same thing with the Greens. I don't agree with a lot of the things that they're doing and saying, but that doesn't mean that I want them all to die.
Right, and that I don't acknowledge that they're suffering.
They have their reasons. But Game of Thrones was good at that too. How many people went from hating Jaime Lannister to absolutely loving Jaime Lannister?
Kind of rooting for him at certain points, yeah, sure.
Until he did the stupid thing at the end, but we won't talk about that. We're going to just pretend he stayed there with Brienne.
I'll say this though, I even in some senses felt something for he and his relationship with Cersei. By the end, yes, sure, I was rooting for him and Brienne. Sure, of course. But the tragedy of feeling love, listen, regardless the fact that he's his sister. It's creepy and weird. Game of Thrones again breaks us down to a point where you kind of like the feudal system, kind of like how we're meant to regard the different class systems and what we're supposed to be like. This is why I say it's very hard to envision this world where women have no agency when you clearly see them exhibiting agency. And we have our real world where that's the case too. So when you get broken down to this point and you can't deny the love these two people have for each other, regardless of this constraint that we all have a hard time with brothers and sisters being in love, it's just tragic. You can't deny it.
There's also a difference because, yes, Targaryens intermarried their brothers and sisters for generations, but that had nothing to do with love. That had to do with keeping their blood pure for the dragons.
Right.
Whereas
this was a choice.
Jaime and Cersei, as gross and weird as it is, they were together because they loved each other, not because they were duty bound.
It's just really hard to not acknowledge that, as gross as it was for seasons. And you're like, ugh, really? And they're also awful. The first thing they do in the first episode is absolutely awful and horrible, throwing Bran off that tower. But then you see their suffering.
It's something we say all the time about Walking Dead. If we had come in on a different side, we would feel differently. If we had been introduced to Jaime and Cersei as these poor people who were star-crossed, incestuous lovers, oh God. Cersei and Jaime's mom died when they were little, and the only person they had was Tywin. Ugh.
Right, yeah, that guy. Oof.
So everybody's raised on these stories of the Targaryens and blah, blah, blah. They're out stranded at Casterly Rock by themselves. But you get to see like where they're coming from, and you get to understand why they are the way they are.
And then you also get to see how horrible your protagonists are along the way, too. So it kind of balances out in this weird way. Kind of like we're seeing with the Greens now.
We've always said it about Walking Dead. Nobody is black and white. So you can form this opinion like, oh, I don't like this person. But then you learn in the first half of season 1, you feel bad for Aemond because he's always being picked on and he's always being ridiculed. And you kind of pull for him when he goes to get Vhagar. You're like, oh man, check this kid out. He's going to go get this dragon. Man, what a tough ass kid. Right. And then they totally change your opinion because he's a jerk. But knowing where he comes from, as someone who was bullied when I was a kid, I certainly understand. There are still people I think about from when I was like 11 years old that I still think about how much they hurt me. And I still resent that. I'm not going to go burn them with dragons or anything. But you know what? If I had one and I knew where they were, I might would. Right. We're just being primed to not be on his side.
Right. Well, like Rick and Negan, let's say from The Walking Dead. I accept that. And in fact, I'll take that one step further. We're going to get to a point in the next season where we're going to feel the tragedy of Aemond. Undoubtedly. Because the world, let's just say, is going to be against him at some point, and he's going to lash out and he's going to die, and it's going to be satisfying but also sad. They're not going to give it to us without making us feel something for him. And look, they're going to make us forget about that childhood, but we're going to see it come out again, and I can't wait for it. I thought we might see it in this episode, and we kind of did a little bit with Helena. You see the desperation. They're coming for us just like they did when I was a kid. They're coming for us. They're going to kill us. We have to do this. If we don't do this, and he's not wrong.
And he's not wrong either. But what does it do for you to win the kingdom if you destroy everyone around you and yourself? We're going to talk about bullies. I just wanted to say that Ulf is that person at work who's your friend, and then they get a promotion. All of a sudden, they're better than you. He's like, oh, I'm Mr. High and Mighty now. I can do whatever I want.
I wish Rachel was here. I wish Bridget was here. Because when I first watched the Ulf scenes, Ulf dominates these scenes, bar none. And thank goodness in a way, because objectively, it's uncomfortably funny, hilarious. But it's uncomfortable because you're like, okay, Ulf, come on, man. Just know your place. Because Jace is already nervous about dragon riders feeling like as though at least that they're equals, if not superior to him.
You mean
and
Sir Pout?
Take a claim.
Sir Pout?
Sir Pout. Dude, objectively funny because he's such a good-looking kid with this pouty lip. Listen, I'm not saying I'm attracted to him. I'm just saying he has that blue steel thing going on. That's all I'm saying. So that's why it was so funny.
A meme's coming out of that now.
You'll figure it out.
It's beautiful.
But anyway, the way I register this, because we had said throughout Rhaenyra finding all these dragon seeds, claiming dragons, that they're just happy to be there. well, this is like I've won the lottery, and there's no such thing as a lottery in Westeros. But here we are, and we're just happy to serve. But I'm thankful that we got this also from Ulf, because we get another dimension or another perspective of what it's like for a commoner to suddenly find himself in court. Otherwise, it'd be formulaic.
I was asking myself, well, how was Hugh so composed? Then I remembered his mother was Sarah Targaryen. He knows he doesn't know all about court. He's never been there, but she most likely throughout his childhood probably told him stories about the court and how things were done.
Did some acting, I'm sure.
This is how you act in front of the queen, and this is how you behave yourself. However, Jace, sir, you do need to remember that these people now have dragons.
Oh, poor Jace.
I love that Bale was like, do you think you're the only noble son who wasn't sired by his noble father? Hello.
Who wasn't quite noble.
Hello. You are not the only one.
It's just interesting because you don't want to like Jace because it's you in the real world going, hey, buddy, we're all equal. No, we're not. Because that's why we don't like
He's so
Jace.
haughty about it. Like, I'm just...
But he's right to be. They're insolent. It's know your place. You're not knights yet, bro. I don't want to hate him right away. Even though he's like, mongrels. Whoa, bro. Whoa, slow it. Slow it.
We get it, Jace, but you need to snap out of it because there's more important things going on. You can deal with this after the war, because if you lose the war, it doesn't matter if you're pure-blooded or not, because you're going to be dead. But
it's a mixed bag for me.
If Bronn could be made a lord,
right,
then Ulf can be made a lord. Ulf, you need to bring it down a notch, my friend, but if Bronn can do it, you can do it.
You had said that he suddenly finds himself, hey, you know, I'm like the best. Or in other words, appearing superior to others. Where meanwhile, I think Ulf is still Ulf. He's just found himself another bar. And so when you see him being all casual, he thinks, oh, I'm equal to these people now. I get to hang out with a whole other crowd in a bar. So this is where I kind of compare it to. Ulf is really, again, still us. Us, if we were magically transported into Game of Thrones, not really knowing how Game of Thrones is really like. Hey, I'm in a TV show. I'm Ulf. Add a couple years of misery. Like you said, imagine what it was like for Hugh. Imagine what it was like for Ulf all these years living in the shadow of what might have been, but finding yourself at a bar, just trying to make people's lives easier with your little stories and just trying to eke out day to day. But oh, wait, hold on a second. All of a sudden, those stories were true. And wait, hold on a second. Now I have a dragon. What is happening? All right, I'm Ulf now in court. I found myself a new crowd.
I think that's the difference between you and me, because I would be like, oh my God, I have a dragon.
Oh, no,
my
without
God.
doubt.
I have to go to court and be in front of the queen. Oh my God.
No, but see, you know what it is like in court because you're an omniscient observer of what is happening. Also, you're educated. Let's be honest. And you're a podcaster, and we think of these things thoroughly.
I've had more to eat than a fish for the last 2 months.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, I think most audience members would be like, when we watch The Walking Dead, people always go like, oh, I'd survive the walker apocalypse. Oh, I would do this. I would run faster from the walkers. That's the audience. That's Ulf, the normal audience, not us. We're a little bit more
Ulf
sorry.
is even
We're
like,
better than you.
Hey, I'll do it. Silverwing's a go where she is. We'll just go out there and blah, blah. Like, no, dude, you have no idea.
Yeah, other than the old-timey language, that's the audience. See,
I know better.
Get it? You know better, but the audience doesn't really know better. They're like, oh, if I was on Game of Thrones, I wouldn't do that. Ulf. You just did it. And this is what happened. You got called out, and you shall comport yourself in the dinner table of the queen.
Well, then I guess you better make me a knight then. Everybody complained about no humor, and then everybody complained about the Thailand stuff. What is it that you want, folks?
Exactly.
Here's the other thing.
That was funny as heck.
Everybody complaining about how nothing happened this season. There was no war.
Are you kidding me?
We were gearing up for war at the end of season 1, and here we are still gearing. Excuse me, folks. How do you think a medieval war works? Do you think it's just battle after battle after battle continuously? No. Look in history. There's like a battle, and then like nothing happens for like 2 months, and then there's a battle, and then nothing happens.
Here's a perfect illustration. So like, let's set Ulf aside as the audience insert, right? He's the avatar for the audience. Wait, no. I will put myself on the altar because when Larys finally goes to Aegon and says, we gotta go. And I was Aegon going, because Aegon goes, wait, no, I'm going to sit on that throne and I'm going to put him in jail. And I was like, yes, That's exactly what I've done. I'm going to do exactly like you said a couple episodes back. I'm going to not let them see me coming, right? Oh, you just told me a couple episodes that, you should find yourself on the seat and be like, yeah, what do you think you're doing, Eamon? And I was on board. I was like, yes, Aegon, yes, I am you. I am doing all the things that I was told. And then Laris goes, and then what? And then just like Aegon, I myself too was going, oh man, you're right. You're right. You're right.
I was the same way. I was like, yeah, just F Aemon.
Yeah, I would.
But then Laris was like, what about when
I guess tell me now,
when she
Laris,
comes
tell
and
me.
you don't have Vagar? And I was like, oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right.
That's why you're the
Gosh,
master of
yeah.
whispers, and I'm laying in the bed with my face and my winky burned off.
Exactly. And you know what? Turns out I'm not better than you, audience. Turns out I'm just as dumb as you. And Charity too, because I don't want to be alone.
That's why we don't write the show. Bridget does.
You know what? And she's not here to even say that she's not wrong. So Bridget is right. Everybody, Bridget is right, ultimately, because she decided to leave. She has her honor intact.
Unlike Cole. That scene, it still just hits me right in the feels. Even though it was so depressing, every beat of that scene was just perfect. Fabian Frankel, dude, I hate Kristen Cole, but you just made me not hate him a little bit. So good job.
It's payoff. Had you not told me that this season was cut short, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have cared. We got all the payoff we needed for some slowness, sure. But there was like all these moments where you hated the person here or you weren't sure about Damon there.
I feel like as a society, we have become spoiled with the quality of television that we have. And so when people don't get what they expect that they should get, they just hate on it. I didn't get this battle that I thought I was going to get this season. So now I'm angry and the show is a disappointment. And everybody's like, well, why didn't we have less Thailand? Because you have to set the scene of what's coming up. It's not filler, it's story building.
Right. You can't just have dragons show up in different places.
Right. If you just have dragons killing people, then what was this all for? There's no story. Now, don't get me wrong. I love dragons burning people just as much as everybody else does. But if we got it every episode,
it'd be worthless.
It would not pack the punch it does. That's another complaint. Everybody's like, who do I pull for? I don't like anybody.
Have you watched the series? Then again,
first of all, you're not really supposed to like anybody. They're all terrible people. That's the point. People are terrible.
You know what's really interesting about this conversation we're having right now? Okay, it's 2024. What year was the series finale of Game of Thrones?
2019.
Okay. Was it really? No. Really?
Yep.
2019?
Because it was the year I got into Fear the Walking Dead.
Huh. Well, still, kind of ties into it being almost 6 years of Squawking Dead. So, okay. Well, I guess what I'm saying is that 2019, 8 seasons, 2011 is, I guess,
2010.
Maybe
because there was a couple of seasons where there was like a year and a half between seasons. So
Right, exactly. So all I'm saying is that I think, in a sense, you've got a whole other generation of watchers of the Game of Thrones universe, starting with this House of the Dragon. Maybe they watched Game of Thrones a year before House of the Dragon came out, but I feel like there may be a generational divide. You're not talking about the same people.
House of the Dragon is getting people to watch Game of Thrones who hadn't watched it.
Right. This is precisely what I'm saying, is that you've got this whole other generation of watchers that have cut their teeth on recent shows or semi-recent shows in the last 6 years, not Game of Thrones. And so this audience maybe of the binge show watching spoiled variety, let's say.
But even still, everybody's just like, oh, this whole season has sucked and it's been slow, blah, blah, blah. If you think this was bad television, then you're spoiled, because this was quality just because you didn't get what you wanted. And I wanted it too. Don't get me wrong. I wanted the battle. I expected it. You can't hate the show because you didn't get what you want.
Right. Which, you know what, brings us right back to our Fear the Walking Dead days, which for the most part, you may not get what you want, but you like what you get.
Let me say that I complained about Fear the Walking Dead a lot at the end. I loved 4, 5, and 6, even though other people hated it.
For the most part. Well, let's just put it this way. Take Fear the Walking Dead aside. The same idea applies. And especially when you're talking about Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was designed to never give you what you really wanted. Yeah, there were some victories that Daenerys had along the way, but she suffered a whole bunch at first. The Stark and the Red Wedding and all this stuff. Nobody got what they wanted. Nobody ever. Don't come walking into House of the Dragons. We even had to ask the question, because we're used to this, will Rhaenyra survive the season? Because it occurred to me, yeah, we were rooting for a whole bunch of people in the first season of Game of Thrones, that didn't make it out alive. Why wouldn't Rhaenyra die this season? Just going back to maybe this new audience that's just getting the memo now. You thought your protagonist was going to make it? Well, welcome to the Game of Thrones universe. It's why we had to ask the question, because, oh, wait, we forgot. The people that we like die. And then the people that are left over, we're forced to have to
Even
root
then,
for.
people who watched the end of Game of Thrones.
Oh, boy.
Well,
Oh,
yes, a
boy.
lot of people died, but they were pretty much the people you expected to. And you expect people to die in the finale. That's just a
Right
given.
near the end, yeah.
From season 5, 6, and 7, hardly any of the main characters died. So people got
Right.
out of the used to people dying.
Right.
Kinda-
Kind of like The Walking Dead.
Right, I was going to
too,
say that. Just
by the
kind of
way.
like The Walking Dead,
Yeah.
the last few seasons, because in Game of Thrones, at least, they had already pared their characters down so much that you could only kill off so many before you didn't have anybody left. But also because that's just the point of the show. People die in wars. You're going to lose characters. So prepare yourselves, people.
Characters you've grown
Right.
attached
I mean,
to.
that's the thing. They made you fall in love with people in Game of Thrones. Ned, Robb, and then they kill him.
You know what? It's a little bit more genius what House of the Dragon did. They killed people that you didn't quite maybe grown attached to at all.
Except Viserys.
Yeah, but he had the long march.
Yeah.
It was rough to watch. It's that you saw it being a distinct possibility. I don't know how people are going to react to this new generation, or maybe even the old generation. You get used to these characters not being dead immediately in the first season. And you know what? I don't blame them, because had they done that, it would have been the formula. You're doing the same thing again. So now you have to get people to the point where, oh, I don't want them to go. Oh, well, I guess you forgot.
They
There we
faked you
are.
out a couple times because everybody
Several.
thought Aegon would die. Who died this season? Rhaenys was it. And a bunch of dragon seeds.
Mhm. Well, again, people we don't really care about. But yeah, I get your point. Oh, and, you know, Arik and Eric. But again, Ant's not necessarily main people.
Right. I would say that
ancillary.
Rhaenys was the only main character.
Yeah. Oh, and, you know, what did I say for the first few episodes? It was like, oh, she's the best. She's a saint.
Because she was awesome in the book, too. So I remembered clearly when she died. So I was like...
Again, what's great about the books is how
Yes,
unreliable they
very
are.
unreliable.
Clearly subverted many, many times.
Well, you
in our
have
coverage,
to.
by the way. Well, you have to, but it's also smart to, because it's like you want to invalidate the books however many times as possible because they're so unreliable.
Well, I mean, I'm talking in general. I get angry when they change things from books, but sometimes you have to. Game of Thrones, for instance, everybody complained about how many characters were in the show. People, let me tell you, there were 3 times that many in the books. If they had made it just like the book, you think you're confused now, you think you can't remember anybody's name and you got to call him like Fat King or Bratty Kid or whatever. There's like 140 characters in the books. Yeah,
Oh my
it's
God.
crazy. So be glad they didn't
Oh
do
my
it
God.
like the books. We'd still be watching season 1, trying to fit everybody in.
Speaking of transitioning and giving things a shot, Tywin Lannister
You mean Tywin
at the Triarchy. Or Tywin?
Tyrod was the one that cracked me up, man. Lohar was played by Abigail Thorne, who is a YouTuber,
AKA
Philosophy Tube. When she asked him, "Are you a poet or a philosopher?" And then, of course, we have Cole with his philosophy. I think that was also the other theme of this episode was philosophies, what everybody believes. Because
Mhm.
Cole does have a
Yeah,
philosophy.
I agree.
Cole's philosophy is it's all a pretense, a mask, the chivalry, the honor. It's a masquerade that he is tired of. The war will wipe away the illusion, and it will all be dust. But don't we all want that? We don't necessarily want to die, but we want to escape from the stress and the anxiety and the things we don't like in the world. It's all just garbage. We're all going to die.
And what is the greatest equalizer besides taxes?
Death.
Exactly.
Death comes for us all.
And that's what I was saying about Ulf and why he's important as an us. You hate in others what you hate in yourself. Not Ulf. Ulf is fine. He loves what he sees in others. He sees them as all the same. We're all made of meat. We're all bags of meat. But Jace sees it too, which is why he hates him so much. Accepting Ulf means truly accepting what he sees with his own eyes. Even though my mom claims me as her heir, I'm still a bastard. I see the truth. And it's depressing him. And having these people around depresses him because it reminds him that, well, isn't everybody equal? Aren't I just pretending to be of the line? And isn't just my mom's word making it so that I'm different?
He's also paralleled with Aemond a lot in that he has been teased and bullied about, well, they wouldn't dare do it to his face because he's the prince. But he's heard the whispers, he's heard the sniggering and the laughing.
Ulf,
Right.
rustling his hair,
Right.
his dark hair.
And so he's like Aemond that has scarred him. But rather than be like Aemond who decides to go burn cities,
Right.
he just pouts about it. So I guess that makes him a little bit better than Aemond anyway.
He just blue steels everywhere. This is what I'm saying, though. That is throughout this episode. You see moments like with Kristan, like what makes us different. This whole thing with the sword, the dispensing justice and protecting the righteous. It's all who is righteous?
Well, right. Well, who am I to decide who's righteous and who isn't?
Of us is righteous? Who makes that rule? He's saying the thing that we're all thinking as the audience because we're here in good times. We're all the same, but we're pretending that we're not. It's hard not to see the truth that we're all really, if you're really thinking about it, and like with the children of the forest and the wind, the green man and all that stuff, that really makes us all equal. We're all little playthings. I mean, I wouldn't say that we're playthings to them, but we are part of this weird circle that is bigger than us.
They're like soups. Humans are just here to be our playthings,
whether we like it or not. Right. And so how can you not see the equality or the sameness?
Do you remember that terrible movie in the 90s, Volcano, with Tommy Lee Jones and Anne Heche? There's a lot of commentary on the Los Angeles Police Department and the riots, because this is only a few years post.
I just watched Beverly Hills Cop,
okay. So
yes.
Just post the LA riots, the white cops and the black people that live in the. So at the end, all the people are covered in dust, and this little kid goes, "Oh, look, we're all the same." And every time I watch it, I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Oh boy,
it's the worst. It's so heavy-handed.
It's a little hot in here.
But I can see that. That's what's Ulf is like. We're all the same. Like we're all covered in dragon dust.
Right. And so, how can he not hate that acknowledgement, that public acknowledgement of what he's thinking?
I mean, I get it.
Is that really?
I get it, but I get it.
Difference?
But you know what? There's more important things to worry about, Jace.
I'm just bringing up the mirror. It's just because you want to understand, as somebody who is in a free world where we have equal rights, it's like you want to get in their mindset of the humanness of that feeling. It's all about promises and oaths and stuff like that. We have to remember that too, and how they mean something in this world.
I wonder if he would feel different if Lucerys was still alive.
Well, no, I don't think he would feel any different because he's in the same boat. And maybe even more protective.
Well, he feels like he's the only son of any age now because the other ones are babies. The weight of it is a little heavier on him now.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, the babies are at least Targaryen looking too. So that makes it worse, I think, too. If he was gone, well, further down the line we go. See, and that makes his role even less important. All somebody would have to do is take him out. One of the dragon seeds, for example. I get it. And listen, we see a lot of people who feel like they were owed something. But listen, everybody has their worries. And so when he sees that the world has promised me something and well, wait a minute, what makes me any different than anybody else? And at any point in time, that promise can be changed. Like, look at Rhaenyra. This whole battle is about a promise that was made that was taken from her. So why wouldn't they take it from him? They, meaning the dragon seeds, but they meaning anyone really. But dragon seeds are the focus of his concern.
That's going to be an issue for him regardless of his. Here's something I learned from reading Outlander in English law anyway, especially 1800s, 1700s type law. It did not matter who the father of the child was. If it was born to the mother, then it was that father's child. Oh. So he is legitimate because Rhaenyra is his mother. They're making a big deal out of it, but in reality, there's absolutely nothing they can do about it. They can say you're a bastard, but they cannot make him step down. They can't prove anything. They don't have DNA testing. They can't prove anything that he is not a bastard.
Right. But I don't think that's really what's worrying him, is that I think he's waking up to the idea that the world is changing and that his promise could change along with it, along with the fact that his mother is an example.
That comes with warfare.
Well, warfare, but plus the societal changes necessary to suit the conditions which would ensure their victory. Meaning, okay, we have all these dragon seeds. All of a sudden they become dragon riders. And now she's promising that they'll be knights after their service. It's not unheard of, but it's like out of nowhere. And usually there's a lot more work involved. Kind of like with Bronn. You've gone through the muck. You've protected Tyrion. You've done all the things. Okay, here you go. Here's your reward for your service. These guys just cropped up out of nowhere, being nothing but being able to get a dragon. And it's like, here you go.
In Jurassic Park, when Ian Malcolm is talking about how they made the dinosaurs, and he's like, you stood on the shoulders of geniuses, but you didn't do the work to make it happen. You got it from somebody else who did the work. He's feeling like they are not doing the work, which, like I said earlier, is maybe something that you have to do to get the dragon, right? You have to work for it. But again, I'm a book reader, so
Right.
I kind of know what's going to happen. I don't want to say too much.
There's a reason why we went back to Ulf, and it'll become clear once we start talking about Thailand. Rather than, I think, Ulf thinking he's better. I know I kind of said this, but I didn't really say it explicitly. Rather than Ulf thinking that he's better or superior, like, oh, I'm the talk of the town, he sees himself as an equal, which is still bad. Okay, granted, it's still bad, but it's not as bad. It's like he says, "Oh, I'm with you now. I'm one of you." Because there's a concern, right? I'm watching Ulf. I'm like thinking, "Oh, is he going to reach a little higher than where he's at?" No, he's just like saying it out loud. He's like, "You guys need a little bit better sense of humor." That's all he's saying. What good is all this station if you can't be merry?
Didn't feel like he was joking. I feel like you guys need a sense of humor was because they were rebuffing what he was doing. Maybe like he wants to fit in, but he's been elevated to this place and now he's like, I'm special.
All along, I thought it was special, but now here I am. I actually am. I guess what I'm saying is also that it does kind of touch on maybe what Kriston is touching on and how honor and oaths and all that stuff, it just melts like mist in the morning, considering the fact that both possibly he and Kriston might die. Ulf is fully aware of that. And so he's thinking to himself, well, if I'm going to die, might as well get a few little birds and some more wine. Because Adam makes that very clear. Like, yes, he's trying to comport himself in such a way that says, well, you know, I'm going to go out and I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory and I may die. And now it's just a matter of, hey, I'm going to best you, Adam. He's talking himself up. He's actually faking it till he makes it. And so as long as I'm here, I'm going to make some jokes. I'm going to die
I love that
tomorrow.
you and I see this from two completely different directions.
And that's what's so great about it, because it's like, I can see it, and maybe it's all perspectives and bias.
Well,
and,
it's your own personal history. It's your own personal history
experience.
reading into it. So
yeah. And both are valid. I mean, in a sense, it's whatever you want it to be at the time. Because why, Ulf? Why? What are you doing?
why are you proving to be the worst that they think you are?
Exactly. It's like that self-fulfilling prophecy. They already think I'm like this, so I might as well play the part. But we get to Thailand and it pairs perfectly, because you're thinking to yourself, crappy audience, what is with this scene? What's with all these scenes with Thailand? And if you're paying attention, it doesn't occur to you until right after the mud wrestling. And we're going to go back and forth. That's fine. But right at the mud wrestling scene, when he finally bests Lohar enough to get his respect, it's confusing because Abigail Thorne is a trans female and she plays a man.
Well, I think
confusing.
that Shakar Lohar,
Admiral
Shokar
Lohar
is supposed to be just gender fluid. They call him, but
he can't have kids.
Well, neither can Aegon.
He can't sire kids.
Neither can Aegon.
Look at Aegon. Yeah, exactly. Well, you can have a harem. Anyway, let's not get caught up
like
on that.
Aegon.
What it is, because Lohar makes a joke, but it's not a joke. He says, have you ever eaten the flesh of your enemies? And Thailand says, no, nor would I ever. Because all of this time that he's suffering the craziness of the triarchy and all their wild demands, 100 crowns per person, not per ship, per person. And all these things, like you hear it in the beginning, all the indignities and all that stuff. The joke is meant to test Thailand to see if he has principles. Because this whole time he's acquiescing, he's doing his best. He's holding his nose. He's like, oh, okay. All right. Lohar finally found the line where it's like, oh, you'll go here and no further. Okay. And that's when he accepts him and his proposal and all that stuff. And all of that is really to say, because it goes back to Bela and Jace. Because Sir Pout and stuff, she says it very cleanly. It's the way of the world. It's all about what people are willing to accept. Oaths are oaths and all the honor and all that stuff. But an oath is only as good as the people who are willing to accept that oath, because they're not things in and of themselves. Laws aren't laws in and of themselves. We jaywalk all the time, right? It's a law. We have tons of common law that we don't follow anymore that are technically things that people can get us on. but we don't follow them anymore. Laws are only laws if they're going to be enforced. Oaths are only oaths as long as the people around that oath are willing to honor them. So Jace, step up and be the person of worth that would follow your namesake, that would follow being crowned the heir to Rhaenyra. Don't pout about it. Be worthy of your name. When you go back to Thailand, you see that process through and through. He's becoming worthy of this promise, this deal that they have together, that they want to know that the person that they're dealing with isn't going to say what they're going to say and then go back on it.
Well, which they
want to know this person has
totally
principles.
could, because they can promise them the stepstones and then totally not hand over the stepstones after the war.
Right.
I also noticed that Corlys is not at all prepared for the Triarchy. He says, we're going to fight our enemy, be they Lannister or Greyjoy. He has no idea that the Triarchy is coming to.
And yet he sees the gulls flying low, which is possible bad weather, but it's a bad omen too. It's like you're not seeing the signs. It's just interesting because let me ask you something. I had no issues with Tylan throughout this entire series. He's not been a nefarious
I actually
character per
like
se.
that he and his twin are like the opposites of the Cargill twins, because neither one of them gave up their honor in the end. But Jason Lannister is haughty and basically the opposite of Tylan. Had they sent Jason Lannister over there instead, I don't think there would have been a deal. They would have killed him. We've seen him with his army, pulling actual lions behind him. While the Cargills were 2 bodies but 1 soul, basically, I feel like the Lannister twins are the exact opposite of that. Tylan is very meek and not martial at all.
Well, diplomatic and
And
compliant.
Jason is not.
They have their strengths, clearly. Jason is clearly a capable warrior. We've seen that in the first season. But clearly, Tylan is an expert diplomat. He knows the ways of the world and knows how things work. He is technically the master of ships. They mentioned that in this episode.
They might have made him master of ships too, but he's master of coin.
It's like a yin-yang because he has a little bit of that fighter in him. We got to see a little bit of that. Now, will we see a little diplomacy from Jason
He was
Lannister?
determined
I
to
don't think so.
complete his duty.
Right. And maybe in that they're the same. And maybe that's right, because if you think about it, what was he offered? He said, listen, with all the ships and fighters we're giving you, you could take the throne for yourself. And what does he do? He's like, nah.
Well, no, because he
Not for
knows
me.
that there's a big dragon that would stop him from doing that. All the ships in the world aren't going to help you against Vagar.
It's not explicitly said. And I certainly acknowledge what you're saying. But when you watch all this humiliation that he's enduring, which, again, the humor in all of this should not go unnoticed. Obviously, it's great. But you get the impression that he has a tremendous amount of duty. He's not unlike Laris in a sense where, listen, I just want to be the guy behind the guy. Like Littlefinger to a certain extent. I want to be like Otto. I want to make the moves, but I don't want to rock the boat. I kind of want to make the world better, probably. And whoever's in charge at the time, yeah, I'll get behind that. Sure. And I'll do it with honor too. I'll put my own life on the line to get the job done. And he does. So when he's offered this thing, he doesn't even give it a second thought. He's like, it's too much trouble for it's worth. I'm already going through all this. I don't want the rigors of the court. And he sees court too. He's seen what's happened to Aegon and Aemond. And he's like, nah, B, that's not for me. I don't want my cock to be like a sausage on a spit.
You run down my leg, or Aegon.
There was one more thing that I thought might tickle you. One of the things in Game of Thrones, remember those 3 warriors just after Daenerys frees the town where all the slaveholders are and with the eunuchs, what were they called? The 3 warriors that came in, one was supposed to have blue hair.
I was going to,
the beautiful one.
I actually had that.
I'm teeing
I
you up
actually
here
had that
'cause,
in my notes. Dario Naharis was supposed to have a blue forked
That's
beard.
it.
So I saw that guy too, and I was like, that was like a little shout out.
Exactly. I feel
The
like they made up for
Tyroshi are
that.
supposed to be like super colorful. I want to say it's like the equivalent of the Middle East and the Far East for us.
Right. A little bit between both. Like Mongol.
Right.
But also a
They're
little of that
supposed
Middle
to
East.
be very colorful and bright. So yeah, I did see the guy with the blue beard. I thought that was cool.
Just to kind of see, because we didn't say this out loud, but the Triarchy are made up of these following nations. It's Lys, Mer, and Tyrosh. Right, Tylan, Tyrosh, Tyrod. Anyway,
Tyroshi.
sorry, I had to say that out loud.
It's also called the Three
Right.
Sisters.
Right. I mentioned that in my notes, which you could get from our Ko-fi or Patreon. But anyway, I figured I'd mention that because it does remind me of that. And you saw more than one person with blue hair, blue beard sort of situation going on. So I thought you'd you would like that because they kind of made up for not having it in Game of Thrones.
Did you notice Alfred Broom scurrying away through the crowd after Daemon declared for Rhaenyra? Ah, yes, I bow, and now I get up
I
and go
did
out through the
not.
crowd because I committed treason.
I did not
Yes.
see that though. I just saw him. He's a very tall man. Like, let me just put it that way. So when he was kneeling, he was kind of like above everybody else.
Yeah. Then
'Cause
when
that's what
everybody
he felt
started
like he
cheering
was.
and everything, and he kind of scurried off through the crowd very furtively.
I did not see that.
Very
Okay.
furtively. I also want to say that the dragons are awesome this entire season. Even though we didn't have a lot of dragon action in this episode, we still got like a really good close-up of Caraxes, and we got a really good close-up of when Syrax landed, and then she perched up on the roof when Rhaenyra went to Harrenhal. So I don't want to hear anybody complaining. I swear, people, stop.
By the way, you almost forget that Adam is there flying overhead.
Right. He's up there with Sea Smoke.
Sea Smoke.
So the show is great.
We're getting way more dragon action than
It took
I
3
thought we
seasons to get
would.
dragon action in Game of Thrones. We've had a lot. And again, if you want to throw blame on somebody, don't throw it on the showrunners. Don't throw it on bad writing. Talk to the people at Discovery. Talk to the bean counters, because they're the ones that set the budgets. And the budget is the reason this season was a little off. It did feel like this was not a finale. Thank the strike. Thank the money people.
Or it's kind of like what we said about AMC at certain points when and especially when it came to kind of what we mentioned earlier with Fear the Walking Dead season 8. I felt like we were robbed a little bit of some certain storylines, which we mentioned at length at the time. We will not go back and talk about it, but it does have an effect. But like I said, not everybody's going to feel that way. Had you not said that, I wouldn't have known. And I felt like I got a lot of payoff when it came to so many storylines.
Especially knowing that when you take into account the writer's strike and everything else that was going on. I think they did a fantastic job. All of the actors
Phenomenal.
are great. Were there a few things that were off? Sure. It's a TV show. It's not perfection. Even the best show in the world is going to have some things that don't quite fit. It's just the way it is.
I didn't find anything off. I'm going to be honest with you. That may be a tiny bias on my end because The Boys season 4 felt like, I didn't like that so much. But overall, I enjoyed The Boys season 4. But like we were watching it in comparison and at the same time. And so I was comparing the two series and I'm like, there is nothing wrong with House of the Dragon. I don't mind slow burn stories either. I don't even mind if sometimes those stories frustrate me.
Character growth, and you can't get character growth if you don't build your characters. The people who watch Game of Thrones, there were episodes that were just people talking. You have to have, I wouldn't even call it filler. It's not a filler episode. It's a world building, character building episode. That's what this season was.
Right. And you have to frustrate A, sometimes the audience, and B, especially your characters, because there's no payoff without the struggle. And you know, in some senses, you and the character are going to face those struggles together.
The journey is the point, not the destination.
But even making the audience suffer a little bit makes you feel a little closer to the character because while they're suffering, you're sometimes suffering these dumb dreams. But at the end of the day, if you're seeing the payoff, and it's a trick, they got you to kind of be like, yeah, I like this guy now for some reason. Well, because you suffered along with him. You suffer this awful, awful dream sequence a couple times in a row until you finally got Patty Considine. And
that
so
made it all worth it right there, just getting Patty Considine back for 2 episodes.
Even seeing Millie Alcock going, oh, yes, it's Millie Alcock. I really wanted to see her again. Well, now I got her, but that's not enough to suffer these dreams. Super, super frustrating. But if you can do that and then write a really good payoff near the end, making him feel like his story is bigger than what he first thought it was going to be. You think you know what you're doing, Damon? You think you know what it's all about? You think you can just get away and do anything you want and the world will hand you a throne? Dude, you're not thinking big enough. What if I told you you could be the avatar for the gods and your descendants will be very, very important people in history? And then down the line, this mother of dragons is going to emerge. After all of that, this is bigger than you, bro. You're thinking too small and you're not considering the fact that that's not meant for you. This is a burden that you are not equipped to bear. That's why we keep comparing you to Aemond, because he's going in headstrong, fueled by pure vengeance and not considering the bigger picture. Like you said about, well, you're going to lose your family. You're going to be the king of the ashes. Is that what you wanted?
Allison said it. How much will it take for you to get over what was done to you as a child? It's not even like he was abused. He was just teased by cousins and half. I mean, who doesn't have that?
than losing your eye. I think that might have been the breaking point, is that it took having to lose my eye for things to break.
That was the
For me.
suffering that he had to do.
Right. It's like I screamed for help, and until I lost my eye, nobody listened.
Well, and the only reason I
That's-
listened then is because he got the
that's rough.
dragon.
Right. Payoff, but still doesn't heal the injury, that nobody loved me enough to hear my screams or to hear my suffering. But Vagar did. Listen, audience, I just want to say one thing. This episode, unedited, is so far 3 hours and 20 minutes. I don't know what the end of result of this editing is going to be. I don't know how long it's going to be, but we do this because I loved this season. I loved the last season, but I love this season for what it was.
did too.
There's so
I did
much
too.
payoff. And so that's what makes it so hard for us to have to say goodbye to the season, because more importantly, it was fantastic. It was phenomenal. There's so many things that I could say about this 84-minute episode technically, because they gave us so much throughout this entire season, but also this episode. But B, of course, we're not going to be able to say anything about this series until it comes back, which won't be for maybe 2 years. Right. So all this to say, thank you for listening to our first foray into House of the Dragon with its final episode of season 2, titled The Queen Who Ever Was. And so with that, I say, if you like what you heard, head on over to ratethispodcast.com/squawkingdead. 5 stars and an eggplant is all we need to know that you love us. But tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Tell us what we might have missed. Tell us what we got wrong. Tell us what we got right. Remember to tell us after every single episode. And if you really like what we've done here for you, again, be gentle. This is our first foray into House of the Dragon. Think about possibly following us on either Ko-fi or Patreon. That's ko-fi.com/squawkingdead or patreon.com/squawkingdead, because it's the only place that we post our recording schedules for you to join us in the audience as we record them. Following both those platforms are free. Joining us in our recording sessions are free, so consider doing that. And hey, we've got a lot of bills to pay. And if you want this party to keep on rolling, if you think we're worth it, tip us on Ko-fi and receive at least the unedited episode recordings, the ability to join us in our Discord forever, just with your tip.
Just the tip.
Yeah, exactly. And a whole host of other little perks that you'll see in the introductory email. But if you're really interested in keeping our journey alive and afloat, consider joining the Whisperers tier. Receive a little bit more access to our Discord, a bunch of baseline perks, some discounts in the Ko-fi shop.
Discord is worth it just for the meme feed.
Exactly, for the memes channel. If you happen to join the Whisperers and Survivors here, you'll get even more perks, like 50% off in the merch store, immediately receiving a free classic t-shirt from our merch store, the ability to join us on camera and mic alongside us as we play our Jackbox Games live streams. But also, by the way, occasionally we invite our Whisperers tier members to join us in some of our live streams, like when we're breaking down the news coming out of San Diego Comic-Con. We did that there. Along with all of that, Survivors and Whisperers tier members also receive shoutouts at the end of every episode breakdown and interviews as well. But more than anything else, if you happen to join the Survivors tier, you can join us on camera and mic as we break down these episodes so that you can weigh in immediately with your voice and face alongside us. There's a couple spots left. Join us on our little journey. In any case, I've been your host, David Cameo. I was joined by Cosmom09, Rachel Bird, who had to go to sleep early, Charity, aka Blazy Gardner, who's still here with me, and of course, Bridget, who left way early because she wasn't feeling quite well. That's ko-fi.com/punkybrewster. That's PUNKYBRUASETER. Thank you for joining us. And as far as House of the Dragon goes, we'll see you when we see you. But we've got some cool things coming down the pike, some new series that we're planning on breaking down that we have to talk about doing already, as well as the upcoming The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, Book of Carol,
TWDDDBOC COD
Season 2
PODCOC. I don't know.
POD.
Payment on demand.
That band.
Odds.
So yeah, that series is coming soon. We can't wait to see it, actually. I mean, aside from the title.
Actually, I am.
I saw the first episode really early.
Actually, I am really excited for Daryl Dixon.
Now, and I will tell people that we are going to be breaking down the series from MGM Plus. Watch at least the first 5 episodes to join along with us. First 5 episodes of the first season. And we'll get back to you on how we're going to be doing this so you can join us on that ride. So take care, everybody. We'll see you soon, and hope you enjoy this.
Valar Morghulis. Valar Dohaeris, Dave. That's what you're supposed to say back. Come on.
Well, I just got caught up in the moment. All right. Bye, everybody.